Did that do it? Probably. Need to make sure this shit works, dude. This. There it is. Cool. How's it going, guys? How's life?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Sick. All right. So let's kind of talk about this week. Oh, actually, I guess real quick. I guess while people are still, strolling in, I'll kind of talk about some of the things I did last week. Where's my demo? There it is. So I took some time during the week and just kind of took this a little bit further without those. Let's turn that off. But I have some new things coming in. So this is that painting that I was kind of doing last week. I spent, I don't know, probably like another couple hours on it, and just kind of like brought in some assets from last week, or not last week, last live stream, and then started kind of like just cleaning things up and overall just turning it into a better painting, right? The bones were kind of there, if you guys remember what it looked like, but it's just kind of at least now it's just zooming in, making things work a little bit nicer. Overall, just nothing really that crazy, but yeah, just something kind of fun. The whole point of last week's stream was to basically kind of set up for this week, right? It was mostly like a kind of equipment check, so to speak, right? Just make sure the things are working and this and that, because I hadn't streamed on YouTube before. So I just kind of wanted to do that and just have a little bit of fun. But this week is actually the official start, right? And I wanted to do something a little more special. So for those that know me, I teach classes and things like that. And I wanted to kind of do something a little bit different with this set of live streams, right? Where for this first 10-ish weeks, right? The span of 10 weeks, what I want to do is kind of walk through a project with you guys, right? You can follow along. There's going to be assignments in everything. It's if you've taken one of my classes before, it's a very similar structure. For those of you that are in the Discord, right? You can participate. You'll get feedback and various things like that. This is basically going to be a dry run for what I want this channel to kind of be. You know what I mean? So. This first, I guess, section is going to be a vertical slice project. Basically, I'm going to take a prompt, take an idea, basically a written down idea, all the way to finish, essentially, or I guess a vertical slice of, right? So, a certain amount of keyframes, the assets, the callouts, and everything for it. And what I'm going to do is, because last time we kind of did something similar, but because I was working full time, I couldn't really do anything outside of the live stream because I was working. But this time, I am actually going to be doing live streaming basically as my main thing, and then, freelance and all this other stuff on the side or whatever. So I'm going to be doing this assignment with you, right? Like, you're going to be seeing what you see on live stream, but just like how this week kind of came up, it's going to be basically, I'm going to kind of show you what I would do in my, with actual time, right? Because last time it was like, I have 3 hours to show you something. And 3 hours is a long time to do a demo. But to actually do a portfolio piece, that's basically nothing. If any of you have ever done a real painting before, right? It's barely anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do as much as I can during stream. I'm going to try to record anything I do outside of the stream. That way you guys can view it too. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do that, whether it's like a voiceover or whatever it is. But I'll kind of come in the next week with the full assignment, right? The everything that I would usually bring to I guess a professional setting, essentially. So with that in mind, right, there's going to be assignments, there's going to be various things. If you would like to follow along, right, if you're obviously for anybody, if you'd like to follow along, right, just start doing the assignments, right? Start kind of walking through, ask me questions if you're wondering like, hey, how did you go about this, or what do you think about when you're doing that? And then as well as I'm going to create a channel inside the Discord, and you can submit your work and basically get feedback and everything. So if you're looking to create a portfolio, if you want to understand how a professional would run through a production pipeline, this would be it. I'm going to try and do this in the next 10 weeks. Hopefully we, have some pretty cool things to show with it, but it's going to be a lot of like corner cutting and, you know, just professional techniques that I would do on a normal basis, right? The things that we do in class, they're foundational things that we need to understand and learn. But as we're getting better, as we're starting to develop into professionals, we want to start understanding where we can cut corners and where we shouldn't, right? There's going to be times where I'm going to do things the long way, but then I'm going to do things the short way another time. So, but yeah, so if that interests you, you know, I'd love for you to join. And you know, for everybody watching this now and or later, right? If you joined late, right? Because obviously not everyone's here during week 1, essentially, right? If you joined late, right, you can either just start from the beginning and just show me as you go, or just you know, just kind of start where I'm currently at if you can, right? Because sometimes like, oh, I have a painting that I was doing for a portfolio. Let me just start breaking this down, right? Because week 3-ish, we'll have a keyframe that we have kind of broken down, and then we'll get into doing the other stuff. So, you know, it just depends on how you want to go about it. But yeah, if you're strapped for cash and you're looking for a free class, I don't want to say this is it, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? So cool. Let's talk about this. Let me bring up my the syllabus. Like, I mean, I have a syllabus and everything, so it's like this is legit gonna be a thing. So if you guys are, you know, trying to make a portfolio, don't say we didn't do anything. So, all right, guys. Basically, this first 10 weeks, and something that I want to do, right, is as we kind of go on, maybe we can kind of start talking about different projects to be doing. Right now, it's going to be a world building vertical slice, right? Vertical slice is really like, you know, like a cake slice of the project, just something to kind of get us started. Obviously, it's like I can't do what we do in an entire production in 10 weeks, but I can show you the general gist of what my job kind of is, right? Or at least part of it. And then the next 10 weeks, we can pick something else, you know, 10 weeks after that, blah, 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 this and that. And we can, you know, splice in vehicle design, character design. Please don't ask for character design. But, you know, it's just something where we can change it up. If there's anything that you're looking for, anything you need, that's what this live stream is about at the end of the day, right? I'm not the best professional, you know, to do this. But, you know, I'm just a professional doing this, right? So, well, cool. So with that in mind, just to kind of break down, I have this in the Discord, and then for those of you that are in the live stream later on watching this, I'll have this up somewhere. I need to figure out how to do that. I'll probably put a link to a Google Doc or something inside of the description of the video, so you can kind of watch it there. But we'll figure that out as we kind of go. But basically, this week, reference gathering, generating ideas. You know, I've already done the reference gathering. We'll talk about that in a second. And then basically weeks 1, 2, and 3 is going to be about deciding that first keyframe, right? There's going to be a very specific process that we work that you might not have learned if you haven't taken like my ENT1 class, for example, or my portfolio design class, just because I do things just a little bit different than how we're taught in some courses, but that's because this is how we do it in a professional setting, right? So we're going to kind of start there. And then weeks basically 4 through 10 is going to be me setting up the rest of the design. So the main asset, the main design, whatever that is, the call outs, the layouts, various things like that. So I kind of be breaking things down. I kind of want to come at this with like, you know, the first, I guess, ideation for this demo, right? Like during the live stream itself, you'll see me do one. And then next week, you'll see me kind of come up with like 3 or 4 more, and just kind of show you what I would show up with at like a meeting or something, a creative meeting or something like that. And then, yeah, so, and I'll kind of like talk about other things as we're going. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know. But yeah, I'm just gonna kind of get started. So hope you guys join me. Let's see. Boom. Let's not save that. Cool.
Oh, Kenny, did you mean to stream on Discord as well?
Oh my goodness. You guys didn't say anything? My God. Thanks.
Your introduction sounded so good. I didn't want to interrupt it.
There you go. Appreciate it. All right, you guys see my screen now, right? Cool. Oh,
Yeah.
for those that, so I guess for those in the Discord that did see, I was sharing my screen with the syllabus. So if you want to see that, it's actually in the schedule section on the live stream Discord. So just click that. You'll kind of see what I was talking about. Cool. All right. So let's start this. I am going to break down my project. I guess the gist of kind of what I want to do. Whether it looks like this by the end of it, we'll see. You know what I mean? I'm going to try my best. It is going to be something where it's like there is a bit of flexibility because we're kind of simulating a production setting, right? Like in a normal production, you know, you get the your leads, you get the showrunners, you get whoever, right? And basically, it's just going to be like, hey, we need this thing, we need this, right? And then you have to give them that. You can't just change it. There's no like, you know, hey, I thought this would be a better idea, so here's this. Like, it doesn't work that way. So I'm going to try to stick as close as I can to a lot of these things. You know, but it's going to change and it's going to flex and it's going to be, you know, just something different by the end. And hopefully it represents what this board represents as a whole, right? I can't 100% simulate a real client, right? Unless we get a real client that's, you know, willing to like, you know, watch this live stream and pay us to do it, right? But it is something where I can do basically what I do at work, you know. I guess a little bit of an introduction about me. You know, I'm a visual development / concept artist. I specialize in the kind of world building side. Oftentimes I'm kind of doing like color keys, matte paintings, and VizDev paintings. So, you know, I can do the whole spectrum from basically what a environment focused VizDev artist would generally be doing, right? I have done some layouts. I have done some various things like that. I'm not a super strong character artist, but, you know, I can paint a character in a scene and he's probably gonna look okay, you know, so. So with that in mind, usually when we have a project, we get some sort of reference, right? Like, you know, there's when you're an art director, when you're a creative director, whatever, you're gonna get a bunch of words on a page and they're gonna be strung together like incoherently, right? They're gonna be some dude is just gonna be like, yeah, man, it's like this thing and that, and they're gonna be like explaining all the things that they like don't want to see half the time, which is weird. Like, it's funny because if you've ever worked with a client before, you can get some very energetic clients, you can get some very quiet clients, but at the end of the day, they're not creatives, or not all of them are, right? And they come to us with these ideas and they might not fully know how to explain it. And so as a creative lead, as a, you know, art director or whatever, it's usually your job to take that information and distill it down into what the project is going to look and feel like. And usually at the beginning, you're kind of working with the leads and then that client or whoever to try to come up with the general look of the world. You need 1 or 2 images that's going to kind of start the production process, right? We don't really hire juniors / mid-level artists until a little bit later, right? Because if you don't know what the look is, it takes a very, very high-level artist to kind of bring all of that together, right? Like, how many of you have worked with a client before and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean? It's just like some dude just saying just random things at you and you have to make an image out of it. And then half the time they're like, oh yeah, you know, we trust you, you know, good luck. Like one of my first assignments that I got, like on the packet that I got, it literally said, we trust you. I was like, what the, you know, like what does that even mean? You know? And so this is where I start, right? I usually create a reference board. And this reference board is something that it's more of a reference board for the overall look and feel of the space, right? It doesn't really pertain to anything in particular, right? It's an overall look. We'll create more reference boards as we get more specific, right? For like style, lighting, general forms, various things like that. But this is something where it's when we're lost and we don't know what to do, this is kind of what we're going to try and create, right? So the way I start this off is I usually break things down into a couple different ideas. So let's bring out my paintbrush. Oh, let's turn on some music so we're not dying of silence. Boom. Wait, hold up. There you go. Cool. Oops, hit the mic. So looking at this board, we have a couple different things. And whenever you're creating reference boards, try to resist the urge to drop every image that you see onto this board, right? There's a couple images that are like, this is what I want the most. This is something that I'm going to, I guess, use as my main image. Because even then, like when you're creating work and stuff like that, right? Generally speaking, you float to like one or two references, right? That's usually how it works. Like there's like a couple things here and there. And you're always clicking on that one, right? But whenever you kind of put together a board, usually you'll put it into a folder like this, right? It'll just have a ton of images, and half of them like will be something and half of them won't be, right? Because I'm just looking at these. I just gathered a bunch of images. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. You know what I mean? I'll explain how I'm going to use this in a second. But the whole idea is, not every single one of these is going to be a hit. Not every single one of these is going to be the golden thing that kind of makes that portfolio work, right? But there are a couple things here and there that you're like, oh, okay, I want something like that, right? And that's what you want to do. So I usually keep this section, right, to one or two images that really kind of describe what's happening. And so that's kind of how, like, what I try to think about when I'm putting this together, right? So when you're gathering reference, try to slim it down to a couple different things, right? And so after that, now we have images. So why are they in this order, right? So the way I like to go about this, right? If you've ever heard of the terms big, medium, and small, that's usually a design talk for proportions, right? The amount of reference or the amount of inspiration you're pulling from one thing, right? So in this case, the big B, right, is post World War II Japan, right? Some like, old, like kind of rusted over machines, just unused military equipment that's kind of just rotting essentially, right? And then the medium shape is kinetic sculptures. If you haven't seen this, these are pretty cool. They're wind powered, so they like wind kind of like pushes against this thing, and all these legs kind of walk, and the whole thing kind of goes. It's pretty cool. And then like 70s camera. This is actually the exact camera that I'm using right now when I go take photos and stuff. And that's not my photo, but that is the same camera. And it's just something that I'm interested in, right? So with the big, medium, small, you can kind of think about this in terms of like proportions. So if you think about this like 70%, right? When you look at the project, it's going to look and feel like an image like this, right? And then when you kind of look at the next thing, maybe it's like 20%, maybe 25%, right? And then this is like 10 to 5%, right? And then that's kind of like how I'm breaking it down. So there's a big inspiration here. There's a medium, it's mostly that you can kind of see it. And then there's like little sprinkles of things that we can kind of talk about as we're bringing that in. So that's kind of what that main reference board is about, right? And I'll kind of talk about how I'm using that in a bit once we kind of break things down, but that's the understanding of what this board even means. So when you're creating your reference board, try to distill it down, because this reference board isn't just for you, especially if you want to get into like leadership positions and various things like that, right? You want to start looking at this as a way for your artists or your teammates to kind of understand, like, oh yeah, that's what I'm trying to get. Because I've had projects before where they just throw up on a board, right? They just kind of put a bunch of things into whatever image organization file they use, whether it's Photoshop or whatever else. And there's like 50 images there, and you don't know what to latch onto because every image has something a little bit different. And so by distilling down to a couple, you can kind of get rid of the gray area. Because some people are like, you'll get references sometimes if from, like non-creative people, they'll be like, oh yeah, this image is what I want, right? And then I come in and I show them something mechanical and rusted. They're like, no, I was talking about the mountains. You know what I mean? It's like you get shit like that all day long. So you really have to be careful of what you're talking about when you show these images, right? So, cool. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's get into, let's talk about the IP. So, I wanted to do a loose interpretation, and emphasis on the loose right? Of Pokemon Snap, right? It's just a basically a Pokemon photography game. So if you've ever played it, it's pretty fun. You just kind of go around and you just take pictures of Pokemon in their environment, doing their thing, whatever it is, right? And I wanted to kind of capture that with my story in mind. It's not going to look like a straight up Pokemon, right? It's just the idea is you're taking, photos of these creatures in their space doing their thing, right? And that's kind of what I wanted to do. And in this case, I kind of set the time period to be about 100 years after World War II. So World War II, 1945, and then 100 years later, 2045. And I was thinking, oh, what if like a bunch of spirits came back, from that time period and kind of inhabited these old machines, right? And I wanted these machines to kind of like get up and walk and just be almost basically be a creature. If you've ever seen like Shadow of the Colossus or like Howl's Moving Castle or things like that, where it's like this creature that's kind of moving and lumbering around and doing these things, and they can come in all sorts of different sizes, from super large to basically a small little prop, and then basically kind of show these creatures in their world, right? And I'm going to be doing this in a VizDev style. I am mostly a VizDev artist, so that's what I'm going to be doing. If for anybody in the Discord or anybody that's trying to participate, whatever style that you want to do this in, just do it, right? And don't do my project, do your project, right? Find something that a story or something, preferably something older. I know there's a newer Pokemon Snap, but I'm just going to reference the old one. Not that. It's basically wildlife photography at this point, right? But pick a story, pick something to kind of work with. I usually recommend finding a story that works for that has basically words or something old, because if you pick something new, there's a tendency for you to want to kind of stay true to it. Like, oh, I want to do something like Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever it is, right? And I want to do like a sci-fi version of Cyberpunk. Like, you don't want to do that. It's just too close. It either becomes fan art or people are just, usually they do it better than you, right? So pick something old that doesn't have a lot of like form language to it, or doesn't have a lot of strong design quite yet, and then kind of run with that. And something that I want you to kind of understand, like, is that we're just using the bones, right? You don't have to claim that this is a Pokemon Snap remake. But what you want to kind of understand about this is it's just using a loose structure to kind of give us something to play inside of, right? If you're too open and there's not enough structure to kind of contain you, you can kind of run into like a decision paralysis, right? There's just not enough to kind of contain you, and usually the creativity happens when there's restrictions and parameters and things like that. So that's kind of what that's about. Let's see. What else did I need to say about that? Oh yeah, so I guess for those that for those of you that are more experienced, you understand what we're doing here by taking some sort of like IP that exists and turning it into whatever it's gonna be, right? For those of you that are new that haven't really heard of that process before, right? You see this all day long, right? You see this everywhere. Like, there's remakes all the time, but there's also like retellings of certain stories. Like, I was watching Warm Bodies the other day. If you haven't seen that movie, it's a great movie. But it's Warm Bodies is basically a retelling of the Romeo and Juliet story, right? From that story, and so. It's in this zombie post-apocalyptic world, and this is love story between this zombie and this girl, and it's so interesting because you see the parallels. If you've ever seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But it's just the kind of bones of a story, and then they reset dress it to whatever it is, and and even another example of something like that would be like the God of War games, right, where they had a Greek version and then now it's a Viking version, right? It's just you're kind of re-skinning stories. And the reason I recommend doing this for most people whenever you're starting off is most stories are actually like that. You'd actually be surprised how many stories are just that, right? It's the same like 10 stories or whatever it is, right? But two, we're not writers at the end of the day, and you can get stuck, I guess, designing too many story elements instead of designing the visuals. You know what I'm saying? So just things to kind of think about. And Missy Abbas, will this be archived? It will be. So you'll be able to kind of view this after the fact. You won't be able to ask me any questions, right? It's just something where, because it's not live, right? If you're watching it after the fact. But if you do have any questions, come back the next week and just kind of ask it while we're in like a kind of demo phase, and you'll be, I'll try to answer to the best that I can. So, if you can't follow along live, you can watch the recording and just kind of ask me a little bit later. So, and then Storm Rated says, can I follow along even if I have no fundamentals at all? You can. You absolutely can follow along. So something that I would recommend is, keep it simple if possible, but just understand that, try to get what you can out of this process. This is going to benefit intermediate/advanced level students, right? Because it is, this is portfolio building at the end of the day. But understanding if you have no fundamentals at all, right, just keep it simple. Keep it to just drawing and painting, no 3D, no tricks, nothing. And just try to draw something good and try to think about the things that we're talking about and work on your foundations while we're kind of going. It's not going to be the final portfolio that you ever show, right? Just understand that. But I guess the information that you're learning here can be applied to other classes, to other things as you're going. And, you can rewatch this a little bit later once you're a little more advanced, and then still kind of take away the same information. So it's going to help, but it won't be as beneficial. So, I am going to try to keep it as basic as possible, right? I'm not going to be doing like, super crazy 3D or anything that I guess would be outside of the realm of what normal students are capable of. It's just the process and understanding of why I do certain things is what's going to be the most important part of this all. So cool. All right. Yeah, great questions though. All right. So, and if you haven't noticed, right, there's another thing over here, right? There's, I was talking about these three things and I broke it down to 70, what is it, like 2010 or 25.5, right? And if you're any good at math, right, depending on how you add these together, it should be 100%. So technically speaking, there's no room for this, right? And this is kind of where I like to kind of throw in a curveball, right? Usually when you combined references, if you've ever done form language before, when you combine A plus B, right? If you combined one thing plus another, you can generally kind of tell what that is, and you're probably in the realm of something that exists, right? But if you throw in that third thing, usually you'll have something unique and something that hasn't been done before, more likely than not, right? Just because these three combinations in the percentage that you have, plus the story, plus your style and your take, generally speaking, it probably won't exist, right? Most of the time, you might run into something, right? But this extra thing is kind of what I like to involve into the process just to kind of see how things go. I could use 1% of this, or I can use 90% of this or 99% of this, right? This could be like something that really carries the project, but I'm just going to leave it at extra, right? I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm going to try and incorporate it when I can. And this is kind of what I like to do. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. But the whole point is, I'm kind of looking at it. It's around, and I'm thinking about it as I'm kind of drawing and painting, and designing and stuff like that. So, all right. So with that in mind, reference board, right? Done. Pretty simple, right? I spent, I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 hours trying to put this together. I put this together a little while back. But this is a project that I've been wanting to do just because it's just something that I found kind of fun. I kind of put this together for one of my mentorship students, but he ended up being a little more advanced than some of the demos that I would need to that I would have showed him. So we just kind of stuck to feedback. So this is I guess my chance to do those demos. So. But yeah, this is hopefully this is going to be pretty helpful for those of you that are watching and those of you that are going to be watching this later. For those that are participating, right? I would love to give you feedback if you just send it to me somehow. For those in the Discord, I'll have a direct way for you to do that. For those of you that are just participating outside, just message me, send me a message on Instagram. If you check the YouTube about me section, you'll see Kenny Vo Instagram. Just message me and we'll set something up if you want to participate. So yeah, so that in mind, let's get started. You guys have any questions in the Discord though?
I had a question.
What's up, dude?
Yeah, I was wondering, so if we wanted to do something that was pretty games based and like had a lot of like gameplay thought brought into the project, would it be a good idea to like come up with an IP base as that's like an old story, like you said, as well as like a modern game, sort of like a dual framework type thing?
Yeah, so like, I don't know, you can think of like, what's an old game? Like something like Contra, right? Side scroller kind of game, maybe turn it into a third person shooter. You know what I mean? Like the first couple weeks, it's going to be all the same. Basically there's really no difference between a lot of that pipeline, but once we get to like the call out phase, the designing for information type phase, and I'll explain more when we get there, that's when you're going to start asking yourself a couple different questions, right? Like if you're working for movies / animation, you want to usually ask yourself like, oh, what view am I going to see this in? How are we going to experience this in shot? For games, it's like, what's the layout of the space and how is this playable for a character? Like where are the hidden chests? Is it a straight shot or is it a maze? Where are the interaction points for enemies and things like that? So it's not really that different, because really what you're thinking about is how is somebody supposed to experience this? But the way you answer that is going to be different according to whatever your medium is. So the questions that I'm going to be asking about, or asking myself on the project, is going to be the same questions you're going to ask, but your answer is just going to be different according to whatever your project is. So. But yeah, you can try mixing a couple games. If there's like, I want to do like The Last of Us meets Contra or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know how that's gonna turn out, but cool. Yeah, is that did it help?
Yeah, for sure.
Dope. All right, so let's do this. Usually, right? This is kind of like me whenever like I'll get pulled onto a project and they'd be like, hey, we got this great idea. There's this old game called Pokemon Snap and we want to kind of do a remake of that, right? And they might not always, it's not always like, oh, we're doing something for Pokemon. Sometimes it's like, oh, it's just something like this, right? It's the same idea, right? It's like, oh, we're doing a Spider-Verse type movie, right? We're doing, and it kind of sets you in the same mind space. And so whenever I start, right, it's usually they'll just give me a board, they'll give me whatever. And what my job is as a especially in early development, what they want you to do is kind of give us the first visuals, right? And so for this first phase, the first 3 weeks that we're going to be doing this, it's going to be a lot of just random shit, right? Something that everyone should get comfortable with, right, is not trying to nail down the image on the first try. Right? What you don't want to do is try to be like, oh yeah, this image needs to say it all, right? This image needs to be perfect. Because oftentimes, whenever we design something, I'll put it on the page and then it looks pretty cool. And maybe it's loose, maybe it's tight or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, they'll be like, oh, we really like this part not so much, or we can change this with that. You know what I mean? They'll kind of play off their ideas. And this is what you want to do when you start a project. You want to give them just enough room to play inside of, but you don't want to spell everything out. Because there's this thing that happens with people where when you see something, it's kind of like when you see, when you like look at the clouds, right? There's a different image that we all kind of see, right? It's the same cloud, but it's like, oh, I see a squirrel. It's like, oh, I see a clown or whatever it is, right? It's like just whatever you're seeing. And what you don't want to do is spell it out for your client, because the chances of you being on target 100% in this first round is pretty close to none, right? You probably won't, nail this down immediately, but there's 10% of an idea. There's like, that's the right direction. Because right now, right, you can go any direction. What I need to do is I'm in a dark room and I'm trying to find the door, right? The door is the correct path to go, right? And there's other doors as we kind of go, but at the end of the day, I can't even see a door. I don't even know if I'm facing the right direction. And that's what you want to do. You're just trying to see, just get your body pointed towards where the door is, and then we can start walking towards there. And so these earlier rounds, it's just going to be me just spitballing whatever came to mind first, whatever ideas are being generated to kind of help this thing, I guess, kind of flow. You know what I mean? And then you're going to submit this to a client. You're going to submit this to your lead. And they'll be like, oh shit, that's dope. Check, I really like the way this thing turned out. And it might not even be anything what you were thinking, but no, you look them in the eyes and you go, that's exactly what I was thinking. You know what I mean? Like just own it, cause at the end of the day, right, it doesn't really matter what you were thinking. It matters what lands. And so whenever you're trying to pitch an assignment, right, keep it loose, keep it gestural. And just understand that we're at the first phase. It's the first painting of 1,000, right? You're gonna have time to clarify this, but you need to be in the right direction first, right? So let's get started. Where is my reference? There it is. All right, so I wanted these like big, like lumbering creatures. I wanted it to almost be like they woke up from a sleep, right? It's like this machinery that's kind of rotting. And then all of a sudden it gets basically possessed, and some are aggressive, right? Like some animals are, and then some aren't, right? Some are just kind of walking around. And so I wanted this kind of moment where maybe this creature's coming out of the ground, or maybe it's just kind of there and you're stumbling across it. And so I just kind of found some images, right? Each one of these has a different kind of goal, different kind of purpose. Like some of this texturing is what I wanted to see here. Seeing some of that machinery like kind of rotting, but like still intact, which is pretty dope, right? Seeing like this old bunker, but like covered in nature. I thought that was pretty cool. Just starting to be overgrown and stuff. And we can use some of this to our advantage, and just using some of these photos as an inspiration point, right? As you guys saw last week, it was a lot of like, oh, hey, I just started drawing and then we came up with a thing, right? But now, how I normally work is I'll find a photo, something that's like kind of roughly where I kind of want things, or something that's like kind of cool. Like I saw this image and I thought this was pretty dope. And then I kind of wanted to pursue that. And then I'll show you how I do that in a second, but just kind of walking through some of these photos, like I'm just seeing machineries, just seeing parts and seeing like these big bolts and stuff, textures and things like that. Or even like bunkers, old things with like holes, And I'm just like, I don't know, just guessing, right? This first shotgun round is basically going to be like, just me just seeing what happens. You know what I mean? So cool. Yeah. Moodle Noodle's right. These streams are all going up on the channel afterwards. So you'll be able to kind of catch up, and you'll be able to watch last week's stream, this week's stream. And they should be there indefinitely, if I'm not mistaken. So, I can't promise they'll be here forever, but at the very least, for these next 10 weeks, they will be there. So, I wouldn't sleep on it if I were you, but, don't be afraid that they're going to be gone tomorrow, right? So, but yeah, these are pretty cool stuff. So, open your mind. Look at that. So, I saw these images. I saw these rocks in this shrine thing here. Where I'm trying to find the other one that I had. Was it this one? Yeah. So I wanted to do something like this, where you just had this landscape thing, and we just have this this moment to kind of show this creature off. And usually what I'll do is I'll keep things very graphic, right? Something that you don't want to do whenever you first start painting, especially if you haven't even shown your art director, creative director yet, keep things silhouetted and simple, right? You can do lighting, you can do color, you can do whatever, but keep it as simple as possible. Because for one, they're the fastest paintings that you can do, right? If you ever done a backlit painting, like, the magic of like rim light and done. It's the easiest thing you can possibly do. But also it's a graphic read and just kind of gives it the gist of what's happening. And that's kind of what I want to do here. So I'm gonna take this photo. I'm gonna drop it in. And I'm gonna take this and just kind of do something. Let's see. Kind of want to, basically what I want to do here is I kind of want to just start giving myself something to mess with, right? So I'm going to turn down the opacity, and then I'm just going to start drawing, you know? I'm just going to start kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't work, right? So, but yeah. So, oh, and by the way, we're in the, I guess we're moving into the demo side now. So if you guys in the Discord or in the YouTubes have any like questions or anything at all, you know, from what we're doing here to just anything in general, right? I have some topics I'd love to talk about as we're kind of going, but I'd love to kind of talk about any questions that you guys have, whether it pertains to this or, I don't know, life things. So, yeah. Cool. Bread Sumiko. Hi. I don't know who Bread is, though. You got to give me your name, though. Yeah, look at that. Put the gate up there, bro. Easy. So, something cool about this is like, if you ever have trouble, like, I guess, like creating images, right? That look realistic, right? And you're always like, you're creating from scratch. And you're like, oh, you're drawing. It's like, it looks kind of whatever, this and that, right? If you ever like use the photo and draw it on top, it is magical. So, oh, Julia. Yeah, what's up? Thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging out. But if you've ever like drawn for yourself, it usually looks like just strangled, right? It just doesn't look good, especially for the first little bit. So something that I like doing a lot is I'll just grab a photo, just start drawing on top, right? If you took your own photos, right? For those that know me, I do some photography and stuff like that, and I'll use my photos for things. You'll see it. You'll see it around once we kind of get deeper into this project. It's something where it's just a base, right? You can add on to it. Like I'm moving this shrine up because I want this graphic read to happen just a little bit better. And I'm just trying to push some silhouettes here and there, right? It's just trying to be like, oh, I just need just something, right? And then I'm going to add this thing here, whatever it is. I want that like a leg, I want a centipede to kind of be crawling around this huge centipede thing with like these mechanical legs, and it's going to be like kind of just walking around this rock, and we're going to be like tiny. So this thing's going to be massive, but it just gives us something to start. And then now I have this base which looks like dog shit, but it is something where it's like, okay, cool, it's okay, it's working okay for this 10 seconds that I was doing it. Now it's okay. I have a focal point here. I have this thing, and I have some nice silhouette reads, and I have whatever, right? We're just kind of getting started, right? And now it's, how do I make someone look at the thing, right? This is the focal point. Now, how do I lead the eye to it? So now I'm going to start creating some rhythms and just get people to look at this thing, right? And I made like an arrow kind of pointing this way, but maybe I just make a cloud, right? That kind of leads us that way, right? Make another cloud that kind of pushes us in, maybe there's like waves or whatever. I'll channel my Rolly if I could even do that. I guess if I could channel that, I wouldn't be doing live streams, right? So, but yeah, it's just going to be a lot of like, here's the thing that I'm looking at, and how do I get other people to look at it, right? So let's see. Let's make this more cinematic. Where's my fixed ratio? 16. Let's do 17 by 9. Nope, not an ellipse. All right. Boom. Not delete pixels. Don't want to do that. Let's go. So something I just did there, right? Whenever you're working in a, I guess in a studio, right? Something that I highly recommend. Whenever you're trying to pitch work, you don't want to exit the format that the final product's gonna be in. You know what I'm saying? And so what I'm doing here was I went to a 17 by 9, just a little bit wider than a 16 by 9, basically like a, movie format, because VizDev animation movies, right? And so I'm starting there because I don't want to do this in like a super vertical format, because they're not used to seeing things that way. At least the very first image, we can handle all the other stuff later. We can talk about like making different images and stuff like that. But for these first couple images, when you want to sell your ideas, right? When you want the client to look at this and be like, oh yeah, this is it. You want to set up the format that they're going to see this in. This is the way I like to think about this is, it's as if they pause the movie, or pause the game, whatever it is. Like the client is looking at this image, and it's as if it's a clip from the movie. And if you do that, usually it's received a lot better, right? If you don't, it's not that you can't do it. It's not that it's impossible, but you are kind of fighting that format. And they're like, oh yeah, but how's the movie going to look? Or how, because something that happens, something that's very frustrating for artists is that we're creatives. So we know what things are supposed to look like. We know how to interpret, different images and be like, oh, okay, I can see how that will work. Clients aren't always artists, right? Most showrunners and various people, leads, and people with money essentially aren't artists. That's why they're hiring you. And so whenever you get frustrated and you're trying to pitch these images or these things to your clients, remember that you're the creative, not them. And that's going to help you create stuff that is a little bit more geared towards what a normal person sees. You ever shown work to your mom or your parents, basically non-art people, and then they're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. You know what I mean? That's what a client is. And it's funny because they're like, oh, you're like, this client makes movies? It's like, yeah, because they have the money. You know what I mean? And so whenever you're working, you kind of have to reframe that, because they don't always know what they're looking at. And so whenever I'm pitching work, just remember, they don't know what they're looking at sometimes, and you kind of have to spoon feed it to them. And that's really going to help you kind of bring up your average, your success rate, so to speak. So, if you're talking to like your creative director or your art director, yeah, they know what they're talking about, which is fine. But that's the best case scenario. More often than not, you get someone that's like, I just handle the money, or I handle the scheduling, and you're like, cool, man. So, Cool. All right. Kingston, what's up, dude? So how much do you invest in a line drawing if you know you're painting it after? More time for perspective heavy stuff versus organic stuff? Man, this is about as far as I'll go. Like, if I'm doing a line drawing, yeah, I'm going to spend, 3 or 4 hours cleaning this up, right? This is trash by every metric, right? But it's not going to be a painting, or it's not going to be a drawing. So for me, I try to keep it as loose as possible, because I know that, there's a head here, and there's a shrine gate here. There's, you know what I mean? There's a rock there, there's stuff, and, I'll figure it out. But the whole idea is, I try not to do a full line drawing, because for one, it kind of, for me at the very least, it restricts me down to, I guess, whatever it is that I drew. And I'm actually not that good for, like, I'm not really not that good of a draftsman. Like, I can draw, listen, I'm not bad at it. But, I'm not going to like really figure out everything here, because I do like the way that the painting process kind of works out, and I can kind of bash things in, kind of keep things quick that way, so to speak. So in terms of quality of line drawing, this is it, dude. This is as far as I'll go, but if I do need to do a line drawing, I'll take it a lot further. So. Yo, Fosco. Yeah, man. I hope people learn from this. It's something where I feel like there's a lot of like beginner level art stuff online, right? I feel like there's a lot of like, hey, here's how you draw boxes. Here's how you render things, or here's how you draw. But I think because I teach a lot of classes, and there's a lot of like it's like, oh, I've never even designed like this before. Cause I've taught this, I teach this class, or I used to teach this class, and I get questions like, oh, why do you do it this way specifically? And because they're like, oh, in this class, we learn it like this. And I'm like, yeah, but in production, this is how we do it. Because whenever I first started, right, it was a lot of like, oh, hey, here's a door that we designed, and then we designed the building for that door, and then we put that building in a keyframe, and then by the time you do the keyframe, you can't even see the door that you started with, right, or whatever prop or object, right? And it's very weird because in production we always start with these keyframes, and we always start with these bigger scope images, right? Think things like things from like Craig Mullins, right? When you see his paintings, they're like, oh, they're super loose and gestural. Yeah, because that was the first image they had for that project. And then they hire the juniors and the averages, like other, what I'm saying? They hire the average people to kind of go in and figure out the rest of that world. And that's why he makes the big bucks, right? And so whenever we're in production, we'll start with images like this. I always kind of link it to this one image. Where is that? Oops, there it is. Images. No, where are you? Hold up. Why is it so small? Give me a second. Let me look this up. Star Wars. There you go. Ah, son of a. Vader. There you go. All right. So I always kind of link it back to like this image here. Like whenever I see this image by Ralph McQuarrie, like when you see it, it's like, oh yeah, this is Star Wars, right? This is the concept art for the movie, right? It's the thing that launched the thing, right? And so when you see it, it's really cool because you're like, oh yeah, you're looking at Vader, and this guy's like, yeah, dude, that's Vader. That's him. That's the dude, right? That's the guy that we see, with the mask and the breather and the cape. And then you look at that guy, you're like, who the fuck, like who is that, right? And you're looking at it and you're like, dude, yeah, that's Luke, right? We know that's Luke, but Luke looks nothing like that, right? And this is something where in production, we'll do paintings like this all day. Most paintings are like this up until like the very end, and then the art of books, right? But most paintings kind of show up like this, where there's a scene where there's a character doing a thing. There's something that sells the moment, right? Where it's like, hey, there's these, it's good versus evil. There's this dude fighting this other dude with a lightsaber, right? That's the story. That's the pitch. But then this is how we get greenlit. And then you move into production. You do the turnarounds, you do the character designs, you do all the extra stuff that's necessary to make this project look as cool as it did, right? Luke didn't end up looking like this, but this image is still what that Star Wars movie was about, right? It's the kind of moment that really sells. This is the images that says, hey, put $100 million into this project. Right? Put however much money into this. This is what you're making. They pause the movie. This is the fight. We didn't see something exactly like this, but images like that, I'm not sure exactly when they made this image, but images like this is what starts a lot of these productions. And so whenever we're starting, right, the image that I'm making here, it's probably not gonna look anything like this by the end of it. But it's a start, right? It kind of gets us in the right ballpark, and then, you run from there, so. Cool. Alex said, at my job, we never did pitch painting, straight into production concepts, and no lore or backstory to design to. I've been designing by the Soren of my teeth with no approved design language to use. Man, and that's tough, right? Not every production is the same, right? Most productions will be different, right? That's just how they are. But something to understand is, like, generally speaking, we want, like, I need like a North Star. Like whenever I was working with a team or whatever, whether it's me, whether it's my art director, whether it's my production designer, whoever, it's always like, here's an image that kind of sets up the world, right? Every project you usually hop onto, unless it's like a brand new product, like for this, by the way, this stream is geared towards mid-level and junior concept artists. And so the kind of things I'm talking about would be kind of more geared towards you guys. But whenever you jump onto a project, they usually be like, oh, hey, here's a painting that the senior did. Here's the painting that the creative director did. Here's a painting that the art director did. And this is kind of what we're looking for, right? And then they'll be like, oh, but not this character. We have another different character that we threw in there. You know what I mean? They'll like start, because they have other paintings that they've done, but they have the general feeling, right? And this is kind of what we want to do for this first round. It's just like, hey, does this feel right? Is this like kind of what we want? And then we kind of go from there. So, but yeah, some productions don't do that. It's unfortunate, right? It is something where it is what it is. Not every production does things like this. I will say, more often than not, the more successful productions I've been on start that way. But it's hard to say, like, who's doing what, right? So, All right. So like I was saying before, I don't really start with a super clean line drawing because I'm going to be altering it as I go, right? Like, I've already changed it a little bit from where this painting's kind of started, because I don't need this to be exactly perfect, right? I just need the general idea, and then I can kind of, mess with the details as I go. Is this the most effective, smart way to do things? Probably not. This is be real. But it's just the way I do it. So, I think, generally speaking, you probably draw out the whole thing and kind of go about it that way. But, that's boring, right? That's not the fun stuff that we want to do. Speaking of bad, or not bad, but like leads or not leads, but I guess showrunners and stuff, or clients, right? That you're kind of like, that saying, for those that like, work and stuff like that, or even hear this as a student a lot. It's like, you always hear this idea of like, oh, the client always picks the most generic thing. They always pick the one that, looks dumb or whatever. It's always the first one that you did or whatever, right? And I found that to be true, right? That's just what they always pick the worst ones, right? It's always like, whatever was the one that you probably didn't like the most, that's the one you're doing. This is how it is. But it never made sense to me. I was like, why is it like that? And I think I heard something a little while back. I think it was this year. I forgot who said it, but the idea was, it's because it's the first thing that they thought of, right? Because whenever a client's pitching you an idea, whether it's like a showrunner, or freelance client, whatever it is, it's always that they have an idea of what they want, right? But you're the creative, and they're kind of like, oh yeah, here's the thing, here's the, this is the pitch packet, run, do your thing, right? And it's always like, you'll do like a handful, and one dude, it's probably gonna be amazing. You're like, dude, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then, you show the client, and then they pick like the most generic one. And at first I was like, yeah, why? They just have bad taste. But I forgot who said it. But they were like, oh yeah, it's because it's the first thing that they thought of, because their creativity doesn't really match ours, generally speaking, right? As professionals in this field, right, that are trained to be creative / have the best, or supposed to have the best ideas, right? Whether we do or not, who knows? But the idea is, they're not trained to think like we do. And so the generic thought, the one that we think is generic, is oftentimes the first idea, because they're like, oh, hey, we want this, thing fighting a thing, and, it's combined with these two things, right? And the first idea comes to mind, and then we're like, we as designers know, oh, we can do this better. There's something else that we can add to this to, make this, just better as a whole, right? But they don't think that way because they're like, oh, that's exactly what I was thinking. And like, you have to explain to them, it's like, oh no, you probably don't want to do this for A, B, and C reason or whatever it is. So I did find that very interesting. Like it kind of like made sense all of a sudden. I was like, oh, that's right. We are the creatives. Something that I wasn't very used to whenever I first started working, especially for like other clients and stuff, is that you're hired as the professional, right? Like even if you're like, let's say you're a junior, or let's say you're like a mid-level artist and you're hired onto a project, and you're probably thinking like, oh, I'm just a random Joe Schmo or Jane Schmo, right? And it's always like, I guess there's no confidence as to like you taking charge or you saying like, what the creative brief needs to be or what the images need to hold or whatever. Right. And it's always like, you just, I guess, don't believe that you should be the one kind of making that call or whatever. But oftentimes we find ourselves in this situation where they're all looking at you, where they're like, hey, you're the creative, you're the concept artist. What do you think? You're like, I just started, but you got to remember, like, you're the professional, you're the one that they hired to solve these problems. And, if you're kind of like shy about it and you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, man, they might not call on you again and they might actually hire a lead or something. But right, if you understand your role at the studio, your role at the place, then oftentimes it's just like, oh yeah, you can really, I guess, set up this, this role for yourself where you are making these calls, right? Because that's usually what a concept artist does. Then, there's different leads in various positions and stuff that you want to consider as you're doing it. But oftentimes I find myself in positions where it's like, you have this random person that doesn't know what art truly means or what design is, right? And then they ask you, and you have to have answers. You have to kind of know these things because you're the plumber, right? You're the person they hired to kind of answer these things for them. And it's such a weird spot to be in if you're not used to it. But it's something to kind of realize, whenever you're at a school, you have a teacher that kind of tells you what to do. And then when you have other students in your team projects that kind of know what they're doing or whatever. And there's this tendency to like want to fall back, right? Be like, oh yeah, I just kind of do what I'm told. But when you get into a production setting, oftentimes they'll ask you like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you, what's the idea here? Or how do we solve this? And you're like, oh yeah, I do have to step it up. You know what I mean? So it's a very, a fun dynamic to kind of figure out, but I've found it to be very, very interesting. Alex says, they tell me just to copy another game. I try to push away from it. AD will approve it, but game design will come in and request to be changed to look more like what they want, which is the first boring option. Yeah, man. That's at the end of the day, that's what it is, right? I think something that happens a lot, especially in a production setting, right? There's the ideas that we're like, this is gold. You need to go with this idea. This is like the coolest thing ever. And nobody is doing this right now, right? And you could be 1,000% correct. You very much could be. But something to understand is they're the ones with the wallet, right? They're the ones that are paying. So whenever you're like kind of working with clients and things like that, what I like to do is I'll show them my first idea, right? Or not my first idea, my idea, where I'm like, oh, this is what I think it should be. And then if there's pushback, I'm like, cool, man, it's your project. It's like, you're paying me, dude. If you don't want to do it that way for A, B, and C reason, we won't do it that way. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones with the wallet. They're the ones that are deciding if you get paid or not. And they can continue to go with you or they can go with somebody else. And, I think for us, there's a part of us that's like, oh yeah, I want to do this thing. I want to do something that is, memorable and something cool and useful or whatever. But oftentimes, they need a moneymaker at the end of the day. And when they're paying, that's unfortunately, that's it, right? They're paying for it. So you just kind of have to like kind of keep that in mind. It's tough. It sucks when that happens, but you know, it is what it is, you know. And that's why it's so important. I think we talked about this a little bit last week, you know, be doing portfolio work, you know, like spend the time to work on your own thing, because whenever you're working at a studio, you know, spoiler alert, it's never ever going to be the thing that you want to work on. You know what I mean? Because it's their project, right? They're the ones putting down millions of dollars, right? You know, it's like, I mean, you know, the whole team that gets paid there, right? I mean, there's a lot of money being put on the table. So of course they're the ones that are going to be the ones that are making that call. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, what I would normally do is, you know, just keep that idea. It's your idea. You know, if they don't want to take it, cool. You know, just, that's your thing. You do whatever you want with it. Obviously don't, you know, go into it not drawing as much. Is the idea of like, you know, you're trying to figure out like, you know, how does this thing look? How does this thing work? And sometimes it doesn't look good. So, but that's okay. We're having fun while we're doing it, right? We're doing something interesting. Yeah, that's exactly it, dude. People at the top want their idea. I mean, you know, they're putting down their money, so it's not personal. At the end of the day, it is, you know, it's not like, hey, your ideas suck because you suck as a person. You know, it's not like that at all. It's just, I mean, they're the ones with the wallets. They have investors. The risk is on them, right? If your idea goes bad, or if their idea goes bad, that's their fault. If your idea goes bad, it's still their fault, right? And as well as, you actually don't know what kind of goes on behind the scenes, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, where it's like, whenever I first started, there was a lot of like, I wasn't resisting. I did what I was told, but it is something where like, they'd be like, oh yeah, can you change this? And I'm like, dude, that's retarded. Why would you want to do that? And, you know, they were like, oh, hey, just do it, you know, cause so-and-so asked for it. I was like, sure, whatever, man, you know, just being a diva about it. And, you know, I did the work, but it's just like, at the end of the day, if the idea goes bad, you know, it's their fault, not yours. And you don't want to be in a position where you're actively changing a project for one, without the title, right? Because let's say you're not a lead or whatever, you know what I mean? You're not somebody that has the creative decision making power to do that. And then two, you know, it's like your head's not on the chopping block when that project goes south, right? I've seen projects go south where like, you know, we were just working and then the demo didn't go as well as we hoped. And then they fired the creative director or they fired the art director, and it sucks. But I mean, that's the reason that it's their choice, because if everything goes wrong, they're the ones to blame. And the people that are working at the studio, just continue working, you know, the risk isn't on you. So, you know, just don't take it personally whenever they do that. It's, I mean, you know, you would too if you were in that position. Cool. Finn, let's go to Dave's. Trying to decide if I want to start developing a third portfolio on top of the other two that are currently work in progress that have approaching soft deadlines. If I want to get the most out of this course, do you recommend I start something new or try to shoehorn in something that I'm already developing? So, good question. For those of you, because everyone here is probably, you know, or I guess people in general, right? If you're trying to do your own project, you probably already have a project. And what I would recommend is this: continue doing that project, right? But just jump in whenever we get to your part, right? Because, for example, I'm just doing a painting here. So everybody here has a painting eventually, or you can start a new painting in that project. Like, you know, there's one part of the world and there's another part of the world. There's another image that you can make. So you can kind of start there. Maybe there's a different level. Maybe there's a different room. Maybe there's a different character you can work with, whatever. And we can kind of start from there. If you have deadlines or something, you know, you do that. Don't, you know, ignore this. That's, you know, if it's an important deadline for something, you know, you do what you need to do. But if it is something where you are trying to, you know, you want to kind of make a portfolio, then I would recommend, you know, just follow along with this if you can, you know, but, you know, don't feel pressured to like drop what you're doing to do this if you, you know, are already kind of doing something. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense. So. Yo, this thing looks like ass, man. What's wrong with me? One of my friends earlier said they couldn't make it to the stream and try not to cuss too much. I was like, I mean, I checked the box that says not for kids. So if they're here, you're at the wrong stream, buddy. But I mean, you know, if you've been in a kid's chat room, like, I don't know, like a Roblox chat room or whatever they play these days, concept art shit talking is mild compared to what I've seen. Shit, you know, I was playing Counter-Strike as a kid, like back in the day, where you had to go to like a PC cafe, right? If you guys know what that is. And you know, you just had to go to a PC cafe to play Counter-Strike or to do a LAN party. And dude, there'd be like adults like yelling at you, like grown, like people my age now yelling at like 10-year-old me then on a, you know, in a game. So, you know, let's be real. They've heard this before. Let's not act like they're angels. Finn Down says, if I have the time, I usually try to pitch 3 options, one that is safe and a couple others that are increasingly experimental. I'll be fine if they choose a safe one, but I've had the weird options chosen sometimes when I can make a strong enough argument. Also, hey, I just got here. Thanks for the stream. I'm gonna try to catch up. Yeah, dude. Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? Whenever I'm pitching work, it's a lot of like, you know, like what I'll do is first and foremost, you need to give them what they're asking for. For those, like obviously Finn Downs is doing this, right? So he's got this on lock. But for anybody that maybe wasn't planning on doing that, what I recommend doing is give them what they asked for, right? If you need a plumber and you need a leak fix the leak, right? You know, that's what they asked for. They're paying you money, sometimes a lot. Do the thing they asked for. But you can be like, hey, I recommend doing this, right? Or you can show them this other thing. But what I recommend doing is don't take the time out of your job to do the thing that you wanted to do. Do theirs first, and then do the thing you wanted to do second. And you might have to catch up. You might have to, you know, do whatever it is that you need to do to get that finished, because essentially you're doing double, in Finn's case, triple the work. You know, might not always be the best thing to do. You know what I mean? But it is something where you do have a better chance, because they can easily disregard that if they don't like it. They're like, oh, hey, yeah, that's really cool. Let's go with option A though. You know what I mean? Fine. You know, it's not a big deal, but sometimes they'll be like, hey, no, that's a really good idea. Because, you know, you're probably a concept artist with good ideas. You know, most of us are. And so that's kind of where that's how I would play. And that's how I've played it before, where it's like, hey, here's the idea that you asked for. But this is, you know, what I recommend as the professional, as the contractor, as the expert in this field, right? This is what I recommend doing. And oftentimes you'll find that they receive that pretty well. You know, it's usually not that it's not really like frowned upon to do that. It usually shows initiative, to be honest. But you don't want to be like, you know, I thought your idea was cool, but here's my idea. You don't want to do that. That's how you get curb stomped. You don't want to do that at all. That's not kosher. So. Why did I choose to do a centipede? This is stupid. You ever because I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if it was like crawling over this rock. You know what I mean? And then I'm like, damn it, there's like 50 legs. It's all right. It's for the views, man. It's for the stream. It's for you guys. All right, let's do this. Make that look that. Look at that and make it look good. Developer Paul 123. Hi. Yeah. No. You know, I hope everyone's able to pick some stuff up from this stream, and you know, from the next 10 weeks. And for those that are showing up late, for those that didn't hear the beginning, right? The way this is going to be running as I'm kind of going through this is I'm going to be kind of creating a portfolio project, right? I had a pitch project. I'll upload all this stuff a little bit later after the stream, but I had a pitch that I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to be doing a vertical slice of a project and showing you how I go from start to finish on on an assignment, and show you like real assignments, like why I do certain things, how I do certain things, and stuff like that. So it's not going to be like, oh, here's a painting that I did that doesn't lead to anything. It's going to be like an actual decision, and I'll explain why I make certain decisions a little bit later. But that's we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So if you are looking to create a portfolio project, please, I recommend joining. You can follow along. You can do it by yourself if you'd like. If you want some feedback, definitely like send it to me. If you're, just reach out to me on my Instagram, message me. I'll try to keep an eye out and make sure I receive all those messages, and then kind of go from there. So, but yeah, just follow along. If you have any questions, save it for the next week. Like if you have any questions from this week, save it for next week, and I can answer to the best of my ability. So. Developer Paul says, you seem surprised to see someone with my name here. Dude, I'm surprised to see any names here. Just being real. So, Nice, Alex. Spreading it out. Appreciate it, dude. Yeah, for anybody, like, I'd love for you guys to share this, not because, like, subscribe and share. Like, I don't want to say it like that, but it is something where I think a lot of people are missing. The reason I'm doing this, right, is I feel like a lot of people are missing the, I guess, basic information of just learning, like, how to work. You know what I mean? Like, I get this question a lot, like in my classes, where it's like, oh, hey, how do I make a portfolio? How do I do these basic things? And a lot of classes don't teach these things. There are classes that do, right? I'm not saying they don't, right? But a lot of classes are focused around a certain skill. Hey, you're going to learn figure drawing. You're going to learn perspective. You're going to learn, so on and so forth, right? And so what happens is, actually working in a production process, it can be very confusing, and you don't know why you do certain things, because when you're an artist at home doing, you're a student, whatever you are, right? It's super easy just to be like, oh yeah, I'll just do this thing because of arbitrary reason A. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you just do it just because you do it, like that no one ever stopped you, basically is why you do it. Right. And so what I want to do is kind of show what a concept artist / visual development artist actually does, right? Like, whenever I'm working, there's certain rules, there's certain things and reasons that I would do it. Like, if anybody, for those that know me, know my class, I teach a very particular process, right? Whenever I'm working. And it's not because, I'm some asshole that wants you to work my way. It's because I have gone through hell and back with this process, and I've had some of the best clients in the world, like not best like famous wise, but like some of the nicest people and best clients to work with in the world, but I've also had some of the worst clients in the world, and you can't like always count on your client being the best. And so whenever you are working, you want a process that's bulletproof. You want something that is adjustable. Like, hey, I don't like that cloud. If you merged it with your background, you're not going to have a good time. It's just, a 10-minute fix or 5, like literally like, oh, I don't like that cloud in the back. Cool. We just turn it off. Right. And you'll see later how I kind of do all this. But some people would just paint that all in together. And, I recommend working the way you do. Like, if you're a 1-layer painter, right? If you're somebody that's like, hey, I just like doing 1 layer. Cool, man. Do that. But in a production setting, I guarantee you, you're going to wish you had some more layers, just because it's easier to make some changes, and there's going to be changes, right? If there's one thing in a production setting, there's revisions. And if you can't do the revision effectively or quickly, right? for one, it's stressful for you, right? And then two, it's it just doesn't. It just takes forever to do something that's so basic, So, oops. That looks dumb. What are you doing? I swear I do this for a living. I swear. Some of these shapes, I'm like, my God, what are you? And you're showing people this? Ugh. Oh, Fred, and I guess for anybody new here, if you have any like questions, if you have any like things that you're like wondering about at work or, various things, obviously I can't answer every single question, right? But there are some things that I do have some experience with. So, definitely feel free to ask. We talk about, for those that have taken my class, this, but for those that haven't, we talk about things like freelance rates. We talk about, how to land first jobs, things to think about, stuff like that. So, if you have any questions, definitely just holler out, because chances are everyone else has that same question. Everyone else is thinking, oh yeah, I should ask that. Oh yeah, that's a good question. I do want to know that answer. And so don't be shy. There's no such thing as a dumb question here. I'm not saying that like those people, there's no such thing as a dumb question. I mean, I don't say it like that, but you know what I mean? Like there are dumb questions, but I'll answer it, because the thing is, the reason why I'm so insistent on these questions is even if it's like, dude, what brush are you using? The reason I say that is because it might be a dumb question, because we always know like, oh yeah, hey, what brush are you using? Or what's, what size is your canvas? I've gotten that before. And like, yeah, it's not like the best question you could have asked, but it's a question that was stopping you from getting to wherever you need to be, right? I need you asking better questions, but you can't do that if you're not asking the questions that are on your mind, So definitely, just ask whatever you want. All right, Brad says, do you know anyone who's done the theme park to entertainment jump? I have, technically. I mean, I don't know. I guess I did a lot of Disney Imagineering things. My first studio job, we were doing studio work for the Disney Imagineering for the Marvel stuff. I mean, among other things. And we did a lot of that in terms of like in studio, like working at Disney Imagineering. No, I was not, but they contracted us for basically everything Blue Sky development for that project. So if there's any questions, I can help you with that or try to help. Yeah, it's GrowPad, huh? Yeah, we did for those that don't know, we did the Marvel's Avengers campus, the ones at California Adventure. I mean, there's a ride at basically every Disney. We Blue Sky developed most of that. I don't say all of it, but they were like, hey, we have this building. Can you like turn it into something cool? And then we tried. Whether it is or not, who truly knows? I guess that's up to you guys, what you go, but yeah. But I guess to answer your question, like to make that jump from theme park to entertainment, I think you'd be surprised how non-different it really is. Like it's non-different, if that's a word. It's pretty similar, right? So for those that don't know, right? I guess as you're going from, like, if you work in theme park, right? It's a lot of like, oh, hey, here's like, so there's a ride that we need a design for, right? So it's like, what's this people carrier look like? The thing that the people sit in, right? The roller coaster part. There's like there's that thing you got to design. And then sometimes it's designing the experience, right? It's some of the cooler things we did was like, oh, hey, what's it look like when you're going down the tunnel? And then they're showing effects and this and that, right? There's some of those things. But generally speaking, right? The thing that you design is the experience for the audience, right? The audience being the rider in this case, right? The person that's like, riding the ride. And so, the reason I bring this up is because whenever you work in games, movies, animation, or whatever, it's the same thing. What am I designing? I'm designing an experience for the audience. I create an image that shows what the movies will look like. I create something that is going to, I guess, show what the movie looks and feels like, right? And then I break it down and show like a modeler how to build this thing. So in your case, right, you might have done a people carrier, and then I was like, oh yeah, so what does that look like so we can build it? And so you do a top view, side view, front view, whatever, right? The only difference would be for this keyframe, right? I have this big creature kind of like, kind of crawling all over this rock. And then all I would do is put like moms and strollers, right, in the foreground here, like kind of walking up to it, because that's what the theme park ride would look like. It's like normal people wearing everyday clothes in this fantasy setting. It's like, you have this epic kind of thing coming at you. You have the Avengers flying in, doing the thing, and then you have like moms and strollers like looking around, because that's what it is. That's what they're trying to show. You're trying to show them what it looks like in the park. So just translate that thinking into your project, right? It's whenever you show this, it's for a movie, right? So how am I showing this? I'm showing this in a movie format, and just don't put moms and strollers, put theme appropriate things or people or whatever. And it should put you in a better spot. Is it the full answer? I can't give you that in I guess the 3 hours that we're going to be here. But for the next couple of weeks, hopefully I'll be able to kind of give you some questions to ask yourself as you're making your portfolio work to help push you into that better space. You know what I'm saying? So I hope that helps. If there's anything specific you want to know, just holler. Cool. All right, guys. So I have my, oh yeah, the people pointing that's the folder. That's the people. Like I have this dude, and he's like, it's funny. So when I was doing theme park stuff, there's this guy we called him Frank, right? I don't even know if his name's Frank, but he's this guy. He has his hands in his pocket. He's kind of bald. He has a bomber jacket on, and he's just leaning forward. He's just like looking, And it's funny because it's fucking perfect. It's like you have this attraction, and then you have a dude looking at the thing, and it's like, it's perfect. And that's what a lot of theme park work was. It was making this epic scene, and in the foreground had some regular people in it, whether it's like their heads, whether they're wearing like a VR helmet, whatever it is. But the whole point is you're just creating an experience, you know what I mean? And just translate that information. Instead of doing a theme park attraction, you're doing a movie, you're doing a game, right? Instead of creating a walkway path for pedestrians, you're creating a layout for a gameplay experience. It's really not as different as you might believe, because like in a theme park, it's like, oh, how do I get people to walk from here to here, right? So they know, like, it's basically a game, right? It's just like, I don't know if you guys have played like Roller Coaster Tycoon. It's like, how do you organize the people to get from the entrance to the people carrier, right? And there's, a set of bars, a set of railings that kind of snake through to kind of maze, so you can have an efficient line that's as long as it can be, but in a small space, right? And you're trying to lead them through the space. And the difference is, whenever you're doing that in game, you just, instead of handrails, it's crates, it's boxes, it's set dressing, it's closed doors that they can't go inside of. It's damage that blocks them from going away from where you want them to go. And it's like the same idea, just themed out. Versus theme park, it's, people with strollers, Yeah. So, theme park's fun. Theme park is, I didn't like it at first. I think it's something where it was like, dude, this thing sucks. I want to do the cool stuff. But then, once you actually get to ride the thing, once you're in the space where, like, you know what I mean? Like they're going to make this, whatever it is that you're doing in theme park, they're going to make it. If you can go, if you have the ability to go, if it's here or local, right? It's actually pretty cool. It's kind of cheesy sometimes, whatever, but it is what it is, so. All right, let's do this. So I have an image, right? It's an image that started from another image. Basically, right? This is kind of how I start, right? I just had a rock. I was like, dude, it would be cool if I juxtaposed this shrine with a large creature thing, right? So now there's a lot of things that are not here that need to be here. Like, what is this creature doing here? I need to see people. I need to see paths. But something to understand is I have graphic read, right? I have the ability to see like, oh, there's this thing silhouetted. You know, you can kind of see some of the silhouette spikes that are different. And then I'm going to show a little bit of that shrine. I'm going to show some other stuff. But, you know, something where it's like we're kind of most of the way through this image, right? It's not, I'm not stopping here. But the idea is it is enough for me to be like, oh, that's pretty cool, right? That's all you need to see. Whenever you're doing this, try not to get lost with the idea of trying to make this thing beautiful or something that will like kind of make everybody like go, wow. You know what I mean? Because that's not really what entertainment designers do. We build up to it, right? We start from something and then we kind of move into the better ideas. And something that we do as like artists, right? Like let's say you work at a studio and you have a lead, you have an art director, you have somebody basically above you. And usually you report to them, right? And so you do a thumbnail like this, you do 10 of these, and you submit it to your art director, and they're like, cool, I like that one, I like this one, I like this one. Let's add this thing, let's do that. You know, it's a collaborative aspect. And so once you do all that, what happens? There's a bigger review, right? Whether you're there or not, the art director has to take that image and bring it to either the creative director, to production designer, to showrunners, to directors, whoever, and be like, hey, this is what we're thinking, right? And so the process is a building process. It's, I put something on the page, you tell me what else you need. But understand that we just need 10%, you know? It's like, oh, that's a cloud, that's water, that's a thing, cool, perfect. And then we can kind of move on from there. This process isn't as organic as like a studio process would be, because at this point I would actually move on to another thumbnail. But I'm going to take this a little bit further. That way you can kind of see where I would present at, right? Because presenting process for a client and presenting process for my art director is actually two different things. Just because one can see art better than the other, right? And so with this, I'm going to kind of keep going. And then next week, I'll kind of show you some other ideas that I had brewing or will have brewing. And we'll kind of talk about that. So cool. Yeah. Where it says one is so much cooler in my mind and it hurts my soul every time, but a job is a job. It is a job, right? And I think it's funny that happens so much where like I think whenever I started, yeah, it was the same way. I was like, I want to work here. I want to do this. I want to do that. And for everybody, absolutely go do the thing that you want to do, right? I'm not saying don't do that. But there is a level of like, you know, once you get to that other studio, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to feel the exact same way. It might take a little bit longer, right? But at the end of the day, you generally speaking, it's not your project, right? It's not like your thing, right? Because it's like, I'm going to be happy. And I'm very, very guilty of this. I was like, dude, I'm not happy at this studio, but I'm going to be way happier at this other studio, you know? And then you go to that studio and then you're like, but I'm going to be way happier at this other studio, you know, because they do this, they do that. And you get there and then, you know, you might not even doing that thing anymore. Cause you know, if they're already doing it, if you saw them do it, it's already too late. They've already done it. Right. It's like, oh dude, Spider-Verse style is so cool. I want to work on that. It's too late. The movie's done. You know what I mean? Like it's already gone. You're watching it in theaters. And so, you know, it's a lot of like, you know, you can try and find these projects. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm not saying don't chase it, but it is something where the best place to do what you want to do is in your personal work, you know, because we should all be doing personal work anyway, right? Just, you know, that's why I'm doing this. Surprise. Like, you know, for everybody here, like this is a project to help, you know, people understand what it takes to work as an entertainment designer. And I'm doing this thing. But I'm also going to have a portfolio by the end of this. So, you know, it's not that I'm not benefiting from this. So, you know, it's kind of why I'm doing something like this. You know, I feel like I need some more work. I need some more, not work like client wise. I need some more personal work that describes what I do better. And, this is where, you know, I want to kind of do those things, right? But why not turn on a camera? You know what I mean? So, I mean, turn on a camera, set up a light, turn on a live stream, you know? I guess it's a little bit more involved than that, but you get what I'm saying. Cool. Sick. Let's move into the next spot. So I have some reference here. Let's see. Where are we at here? Pow. All right. So I grabbed this image from Shot Deck. Wait, Shot Deck? Shot Grid. Shot Grid. Yes. Shot Grid. Shot. Wait, hold up. Shot Deck. Sorry. Shot Grid is the is a program we use in production. Anyway, so this is a movie still from, I forgot which movie, but basically I kind of want to hit this tone, this foggy kind of rocky beach vibe, and I'm gonna start color picking / doing things with this. And I have a sketch here. Move this reference board. I have a sketch here, and I have my color key here, right? And whenever I was working at Netflix, this is something that my leads would do for me a lot, where they're like, hey, we have this storyboard from this thing, you know, from whoever, right? From the project. And we have this color key or this color reference, right? From a movie that we're referencing for, you know, the values, the tones, this and that. And they're like, can you, you know, just apply them, do it, and then one up it, right? Make it better. And that's what I'm doing here. That's all I'm doing, right? I'm just taking the sketch that I did, right? And it's not great, you know, but it's a start. And then I'm going to start kind of one-upping it while adding color and adding tones and this and that. So this is kind of where I'm starting. And then, yeah, this is, I'll show you kind of where I go from here. So we have about an hour and a half left, and we'll kind of just start rolling. So. Discord's been quiet. You guys don't have any questions at all? Come on. Come on. There's like 20 of you guys there. 10 of you guys there. It's got to be something. All right. Let's see. Boom, boom. Oh, and the way I'm getting these colors is just color picking. So it's nothing fancy, nothing crazy. Because you know the best part about having color reference is that they don't own the colors. Surprise. They can't stop you. Bro, this is like stealing, man. It's too easy. Let's see. Boom. And I guess just as a heads up as to where I'm going with this, this is kind of just the base, right? This is kind of where like I'm just kind of rolling right now. Just like I'm just trying to get the colors in there. I don't need it to be super accurate just yet. I don't need my color harmonies and various things like that. I just need something that's like, oh, that's kind of close. It's like, oh, that's generally what I'm looking for. Because right now, all I need is, you know, just like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that looks foggy, you know. And then we'll kind of work with the details from there. So, and I kept everything separate for this exact reason. So if you're ever wondering why like every cloud, everything is like, even the gradient on the sky is separate, is because I was saving it for this spot. So if you ever do one layer paintings, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. It's just like, oh, I need to colorize it now. That you just, you know, I guess just colorize and pray it looks halfway alive. And I hate colorizing. So I just don't do that. Because, you know.
Hey, Kenny.
Yo, what's up?
So for asking questions, are we gonna just doing like something like this, or we type in the Discord group chat?
Nope, you can just ask it.
Oh.
Yeah,
nice.
because you're in the Discord and and just as a heads up,
nice.
you are live. So just for everybody else, just understand, if you're in the Discord chat and you're speaking, people will hear you. So, you know, just don't say anything weird.
Okay. So previously, because when I was in your class, you were kind of like colorize things, right? You use the color balance in order to keep the value the same. But right now, since you're like color picking, will you mind that actually sometimes the value would change a lot, and then you have to like adjust for several times? So mainly, I'm just curious about like the value structure that you just created.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm doing here is I have a couple things, right? Where for one, I'm doing two things. I did adjust the color, I guess, the value ranges that I had, right? Because the painting that I was doing before, right, the grayscale painting, and then the reference that I have now wasn't exactly the same. One was brighter than the other because I was just putting down value so I could see it, right? But now that I have a tone that I'm going for, I'm just kind of color picking to kind of get started. And I do colorize a little bit, and not like, what I don't do is this. I don't like render the whole thing and then colorize, but it's still just like a basic block out shape. So I can still paint inside of it to get light side, shadow side, or whatever. But what I'll do sometimes is I'll grab, let's say like this piece. Give me a gray piece. There you go. And it'd be like, oh, that's kind of what I want. Like, let's say it's a red centipede, right? And let's say you don't really know your color theory that well, for example. Let's say it's like stupid red, like it's just weird, right? And so let's say you just don't know your color theory that well. And so what I'll do is I'll think like, oh, okay, it's red as a local color, like not in this surrounding where it's like just ambient lighting, right? And I'll darken it down because the whole scene is a bit darker. I'll desaturate it because there's a lot of atmosphere and blues that would desaturate that red. And then I'll kind of shift it towards purples, right? So that purpley color right here, right, is red in a blue ambient scene. You know what I'm saying? So I am colorizing in the sense that I'm like simulating the color effects of what that space is doing, but I'm not like, colorizing like, how you take a black and white painting and then colorize it. I don't usually do that.
So basically, like for the value painting is just giving yourself like a mood and also an idea of the overall structure in terms of value, right?
Yep, that's exactly it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like when we go too far for color painting, sometimes like the value structure gonna be like maybe inside there are too many values, so that sometimes the value structure gonna break. Not as beautiful as the previous value painting, So
yeah, you have to be careful of that, right? And that's why I try not to go too far with my value paintings, right? Because just like what I was, I don't know if you were here before, but what I was saying was I don't really go that far in my my line drawings, right? Because I'll just I'll design it as I go. So I don't go too far in the line drawing because I don't want to worry about trying to stick to that line drawing. You know what I'm saying? And so the reason that I don't stick too close to my values either is because it's not really figured out, right? Not until I get to this stage where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm kind of in the right ballpark. Because I know I'm going to change it. So all I'm doing, literally the only thing I'm doing is putting down a value just to separate it from the other thing. The rock is separate from the cloud, right? It's not, but I didn't really solidify that that's exactly what I wanted quite yet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, definitely. I feel like your process helped me a lot back then, especially when doing a lot of like digital painting at school.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very, very cool because like sometimes when I do too much of the line work, it just like the feeling of nervous, like just wanted to make sure everything is there. But when you like paint with shape, it's a different feel. It's like we can go whatever and we can just copy our shapes and stuff, and I can have more freedom out of it.
Yeah, that's exactly it, dude. So. Finn Downs asked, I got a question. How many thumbnails is too many thumbnails? I feel like I go a bit too wide during early phases of design. Yes, so that's a great question. Something that I recommend for everybody, right? Because in class, right? Like let's start there. In class, it's always like, oh, hey, do 100 thumbnails. Like you've had those teachers. Like shit, I'm one of them. But like, because usually as a student, right? I'm not saying you are. I mean, you might be, who knows? But the idea is, you don't know how to come up with good designs. So that's why we kind of do a lot, right? You're kind of like, you're not used to creating unique designs on the fly. As a professional, you can probably get away with less thumbnailing because, you know how to come up with less generic ideas quicker, right? Like for me, if I don't find my idea within like 10 thumbnails, I don't know what the idea is. I'm probably lost. You know what I mean? Like it's something where, because when you do 100 thumbnails, right? It's just like, how many of those are actually good? You know what I mean? Like even as a student, like, cause I did 100 thumbnails for one of my teachers once. He looked at it, he goes, there's like 5 good ones here. I was like, fuck man. Like, you know what I mean? Like you could have just did 5, cause you start doing you start regurgitating the same thumbnails cause that's all you got. You don't really have much more after that. And so as a professional, for one, it's wasted effort, right? Because now, if you did 100 thumbnails and they pick like the third one, well, 97 thumbnails, you could have stopped at 97 thumbnails earlier. That's like 8-hour day or 8-hour or like a 40-hour week or whatever that is. You could have stopped a long time ago. You could have rested and hung out with your family, hugged your kids. I don't know, and, that's usually how it goes. So with that in mind, right? I'm usually able to figure something out in about 5 to 6 thumbnails. If I can't figure it out there, I'm probably not going to figure it out in 20 or 30. You know what I mean? In a production setting, what we do is I check in often. I actually don't, and maybe my leads don't like this about me, who knows, but I don't really give them that many thumbnails because they're like, oh, give us some thumbnails. Here's 3. You know what I mean? Some people are like, oh, here's like 50, here's some sketch, but what I do is I check in as much as possible because I'll go, hey, here's my first batch. Here's 3 or 4. What do you think about these? And then, they'll say, oh no, keep going. Or they'll be, oh, I like that one. Right. Versus me trying to like sit there and I guess regurgitate ideas. And maybe I solved it 4 or 5 hours ago because now you're wasting company time essentially. To, not that it's a bad thing, but, not that it's a horrible thing, but, it's something where you don't always want to just kind of constantly be doing that. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Cool. Finn says, I figured that that varies based on how much experience you have, but yeah, it's good. Yeah. It's just, as you get better, you'll start knowing how to do that quicker. Start with, if you can, right? Start with like 5 or 6, and then get to 10. If you don't like what I like to do is this, I'll do my bunch, whatever it is, 4 or 5. And then I'll take all the ideas that I just kind of thought of, I'll put them together, or I'll take the best ones, I'll put them together for that last one. And usually, to be honest, that last one's the one that gets it, just because it's a little more thought out compared to the others. And they don't know why it's thought out, but just my process allows me to do that. And you're able to check in, just a little bit quicker. And, I try to check in as much as possible because you don't want to be going the wrong direction for too long. It's a terrible experience. Oops. Bro, this is kind of cool. I'm actually kind of liking where this is going. He's not trash, right? I guess he's made of trash if he's made of like old parts, but he doesn't let that define him. You know what I'm saying? Sick. Cool. Anna says, I feel like when I'm asked to do too many thumbnails, it kind of stresses me out and I end up giving more mediocre work. But when I focus on doing less, I find that I'm pretty more intentional. Yeah. It's when you spread out your idea, because, you do the first 5, 6, whatever, that's your ideas, right? It's usually, and then everything after that is regurgitations of the same thing. So, that's kind of where I would go. What but you know, for the students out there hearing this, right? You know, it's something where I do recommend doing 100. And the reason in my classes, I tell students, or, you know, some of my assignments are like, hey, here's 100 thumbnails, or here's whatever it is. It's because you need to go through that experience, right? You need to learn how to go through 100 thumbnails, because that is something that kind of builds that experience. And for those of you who are like struggling, like to get better and, you know, do whatever, right? Try doing 100 thumbnails. Like try doing a dumb amount of something, just because it's not about getting the thumbnail right. It's about, I guess, trying to figure out how to ideate more. Like what happens? Like how do you ever do your 10 thumbnails, the ones that you're so used to, and then you're just like, so what do I do next? I don't know what to go. You know what I mean? You want to kind of get out of that. You want to be able to make new thumbnails, and the ideas might not be that different, right? But you are able to kind of keep going, because it happens. Because they're like, sometimes they're like, oh, you don't really quite have it yet, you know, or whatever it is. And that's kind of where, you know, you want to be able to keep going. You're like, oh, cool. Oh, sure. Yeah. I'll keep ideating. Right. And they might not always be the best, but you're not sitting there like, I'm out of ideas. You know, I'm dry. There's nothing left in the tank. Right. Oh, and yeah, Audrey, I knew it was you. Your screen name said Anna. So I was like, I'll just stick to that. And for everybody here, whatever your screen name is, that's what I'm going to call you. I'm going to assume that's what you want to be called. So, you know, if you have a nickname or something that you prefer to go by, you know, I guess let me know somehow.
Sorry, Kenny. Because I don't really use YouTube was just I created a long time ago.
Yeah, I feel you.
So yeah, but it's fine. I just wasn't sure if you knew it was me or not. But yeah.
Oh, I know, Audrey. I know.
I feel like we've had this conversation before.
We have. I was like, "Oh, your name's Anna," and then you're like, "Yeah, no one knows that." I was like, "Oh shit."
Now you just gave away my secret. No, just kidding.
It's all right.
It's not a secret.
It's not like anybody's watching this, so we're good. 16 people will die with this information in their heads. Scylla says, do you ever present your thumbnails with the line work still on, or do you always bring them to the point where there's no line work? So I usually will not present with line work, because this is what my line work looks like. So it doesn't apply, right? I just, there's no reason. I would make new line work to then show this if they asked for it. So that's not really the case. It would take me longer to do the line work than to just show this, you know, so there's no real reason to do that kind of thing. So that's why I do that. But if they need that, that's when I would do it, if that makes sense. So yeah, that makes sense. You got this. Yes, makes sense. Time's 9 o'clock. All right. We're getting somewhere, people. We are getting somewhere. So we're rolling, right? And so like something that I'm doing here, right? And I'm resisting the urge to render, right? Because what you don't want to do you could do it if you want, but what you don't want to do is spend, you know, hours, days, you know, weeks rendering something, and then you're like, yeah, this image is dumb. I don't like this, you know? And so something that I do to probably an uncomfortable level is I take this pretty far. Like a lot of my shapes are starting to be solidified. Like they probably won't change much after where it's at here, right? And so let me pull up a red real quick. And so what I'm doing here is I'm going to refix that, but I have this creature on this rock, right? And what we don't have is scale reference. I don't know how big this is, because I could be this big. I could be this big, you know? But I'm going to have a building right here. And it's going to kind of give us the information. It's like, oh shit, that thing's large. That thing is massive, dude. You know what I mean? Like just imagine this like rolling up on this thing. And it's like, dude, he's huge, you know, and he's made of like a bunch of different machines and stuff, right? I'm trying to show off like cannons and tank pieces and whatever, and I'll get to all that. We'll get to that later. But the whole point is this even worth rendering? Is this even cool? You know what I mean? Is this something that's like worth putting the rest of my week into? Because how many of you ever like painted and you're like, yeah, I've been doing this all week and it looks like trash. You know, I do that more often than I'm proud of. But it is something where I'm just trying to like figure out, like, is this even worth pursuing? You know, is the tone okay? And I'm like slowly adjusting things, you know, as we're kind of going. But whenever you're working, try to be very methodical and understand what step that you're in, right? A lot of times whenever we're painting, it's kind of like, I'm just kind of going, because you get that question a lot, or I get this question a lot, where it's like, you know, there's the idea of like, hey, how far do I take my painting? You know? And when I get that question, it's usually telling me, I don't know what I'm trying to say in each phase, right? Like, cause each phase of design from thumbnail, from like, you know, a high level, like a blue sky design to like a prop design, turnaround, whatever, you don't know what you're trying to convey, right? In this stage, what I'm trying to convey is composition, lighting, and color, right? In this case, it's a pretty foggy day scene, right? It's that scene right there. And so there's going to be a lot of ambientness. So I'm not really too worried about lighting quite yet. I'll get there in a second, but I'm not really quite there yet. And so I'm not really worried about that. But what I am worried about is my silhouette read looking correct? Like what I did here was I'm like slowly popping things off. So, you know, like it was a kind of this rounder shape here. And then I just took out a leg and put it, boom, right there. That way we get this silhouette popping out right there. And then I'm like moving things that way. And I'm like, I move that a little bit further so I get this shape, right? That's so important, because if it's not there, you don't see the legs as much. And I'm trying to give the audience, just, you know, the audience, whoever's viewing this painting, just little bits of information to say, oh, that's a leg, that's a creature. And then once this gets covered in fog or whatever, like I'm going to really, you know, crank down on this thing. You're still going to be able to tell what's going on, because you're not going to be able to rely on any information that's inside of this, this kind of mountain rock shape here. Anything inside of that you won't see, right? Or it's not that you won't see it, but it's harder to see. So these are the chances right here to make my image or my thing read as something, right? And then after that, what I'm trying to do here is set up this image to work accordingly, right? You know, it's like, oh, look at this thing. So what I did was everything's blue, everything's cold, everything's cool grays. And then I have this red. It's kind of purple in this scene, right? It's like closer to pink and purple than red, but it's, you know, red in a blue scene like this. And it's different, right? It's unique compared to everything else. I'm surrounding this red thing with a bunch of blue. So you're automatically like, look at that. And then lines, leading lines, leading lines, leading lines, leading, boom. You know what I mean? And so I'm just kind of forcing all of my basics and foundations to make this image look good. And then we can add lighting. We can do all the cool stuff, all the fun things to, you know, make the people go mad. You know what I mean? So, but for now it's like, is your image even worth pursuing? Because if it's not, you're wasting time, right? And that's a big thing that everyone, I guess, I would want everyone to understand is when you're working in a production setting, right? When you're like in a studio, for example, your time, the amount of time that it took you to do something is money, right? If you ever sit in production meetings, they'll be like, oh yeah, we need a painting of this centipede thing crawling on this rock, right? And then the art director, creative director, whoever, right? Or maybe even your production managers be like, oh, that's going to cost $3,000. You know what I mean? And it's something that, generally speaking, junior and mid-level artists will never hear, right? Maybe a senior might. Art directors hear this probably more often than not. And then, you know, production designers and everything, they hear this shit all day. And it's like, oh, that's going to cost us, you know, this amount of money. And what it means is it's going to cost you, right, 4 days. So your salary, 4 days worth of your salary is gonna how much that image costs, because they need to budget everything. And like when you start talking about like, budgets of like, trying to like, oh, how do you budget a movie, right? It's how long it takes someone to do a painting, obviously plus other things, and how many days they're allowing you to kind of do it. And if you're wasting time on paintings that aren't worth anything, because it's not good, then you're kind of wasting budget, right? It's not like terrible like that to where it's like, oh, they're going to shun you immediately if you do. It's not that bad, but it is something you have to be aware of, right? It's not just you doing a painting. It's you doing a painting on company time. And sometimes you don't have that much time, so.
Hey, Kenny.
What's up?
Sorry to backtrack just a tad, but I do have a question about thumbnails.
What's up?
So, I was actually typing this out, but then I exceeded the word count and I was like, screw that. But one of the type of thumbnails that I find that I really struggle with is like, not just when a scene is like more complex, but when it requires more perspective and structure, or at least that's what I want to get in some of the thumbnails. Like I know that you can zoom in and change angles, but like for example, like if you're doing like a town or a village and there's a lot of buildings and angles, and you want the, I guess, even just the thumbnail to be somewhat accurate to what it's going to look like. Do you have like any suggestion on like how to better approach that without being too stuck in like, do you build a perspective grid for each thumbnail to do that, or how do you really even approach those?
Yeah, so I build a perspective grid for everything. There's a perspective grid on this, right? And there is one thing in the scene that is like probably perspective based, which is that building. It is like not even following that perspective. But what I'm doing here is this. So no matter what, I'm going to talk about this and I'll talk about your question in a second. So what I'm doing here is this. Even though there's no perspective in this scene, like traditionally speaking, where like, we have buildings and cities and, this and that, right? What I am doing is I am working with perspective in a natural kind of way. So my blue lines are going left and right, going this way, right? And I'm following the grid going that way, right? And so what I'm doing here is if you look at the bottom of the clouds, right? They're following that perspective, right? And what that means is this cloud is going left and right, right? And so even though it's an organic object, the gesture of that cloud is following that perspective. And then there's this cloud right here. This cloud, right, follows that perspective almost perfectly. It's not exactly the same, but it's generally the same. And that cloud, right, feels like it's going back in space, right? And so there's this perspective happening with just the clouds alone. But then if you look at the coastline, it's doing something like that. But the gesture of it is heading in perspective. Same here, right? There's a bend right here, but it comes back. It curves back on itself, which on average, right, is moving in that direction. So it feels like it's still on a grid. So this scene, even though it's natural, it's water, clouds, landscape, right? It doesn't really matter because I'm still creating perspective. So no matter what I'm doing, I'm always putting a grid on there. But to go back to your question for like cities and stuff, yes, absolutely. You always want to do it because you're always going to be like, in my opinion, most people aren't that good at perspective. If you think you're good at perspective, you're probably not. Like, you know what I mean? Like you just don't even think that you are, and you'll probably be okay. It's like, just put a grid there, because worst case scenario, you're on point with your perspective. Best case scenario, it fixes something that, you know what I mean? It fixes the perspective thing that you were having trouble with. And you'd never want to be called out for your lack of perspective. If someone's like, hey, your perspective's wrong. In class, it's not a big deal, but in a professional setting, I mean, you're just wasting time because it's such a junior mistake, So what I'll do is I will usually set up a perspective, and I'll have a couple different things. Like, for example, if this was a city, right? I know this is not, but, looking at the grid here, I put a building in perspective like this, where it's like, oh, okay, cool. There's a square building here going in that perspective. And then I'll have like building tops going this way. You know what I mean? It'll be like, and I'll kind of lead back to that perspective, and I'll do the same thing. And then all the other buildings towards the sides, like all of these over here, like the skyline, right? Is I would just like, not that I'm not worried about it, but I don't really try and follow the perspective perfectly, because they're going to be looking here and they're going to be looking down here, right? It's the focal point in the foreground that really need to be on point. Everything else, because buildings can be like slightly turned, it's not really that big a deal. And they're not really going to be looking at it. So it's like, it's okay if some of them are off, but the ones that you're going to be looking at need to be on point. So that's why I usually have a grid on, just to kind of match all that up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, thank you. I haven't taken your world building or like your environment
Shame.
classes, but I took an environment class before I even knew about Brainstorm. And when we were like doing thumbnails before, I think the hardest part is like that we were kind of just told to like sketch in this little thumbnail size. Like we would set up, we were shown how to set up our like Photoshop page to like do these thumbnails. And I think I was really struggling with structure, because I wanted to do things with structure, but like, yeah, like my brain really can't figure it out unless I have the lines there to follow. And so
yeah,
I can't figure it out past drawing like a cube, like one cube.
Something that I have I guess trouble with, right? And you guys saw it. I didn't explain it, but I guess for those were here at the beginning, I did a drawing that looks like trash, to say the least. Hold on, I'll show you. Boom. Let's see, Command I. Where the hell is it? There you are. So this is the drawing, right? I mean, kind of. It's not really, but it is, right? And so nothing, like I did it first. I just started drawing. I just needed some gestures to lead to a point. I need you to look here, and this is how you're going to look there, right? And then all I did was just make that happen. But then I threw a grid on top of that after the fact. So for those that are struggling with creating perspective and things like that, usually we run into this problem of like, oh, I don't really know how to create a scene that feels, I guess, natural and very, very fluid and normal with a grid on, because you're stuck to 90 degrees, right? Because you're following the grid perfectly. So I sketch like this, and then I kind of match up where I need to match up with the grid. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like I don't follow it to the T immediately. I just kind of start with this, and then I'll fix it later, right? That's why I'm so not worried about the line quality, because none of this stuff is going to be important for the last stage, or the painting itself. I just need something to kind of give me placement and get me started. And after that, it's whatever, so. Fin down said, wait, hold on. I need to go up more. Question. Pius Dos is my name. My middle name is Perspective. Well, good luck with that. What's your favorite night snack? I'm not much of a snacker. I've been eating Oreos. That's probably not a good not a good snack to have. I've had some nuts and stuff like that, but it's just not the same. But I don't really snack that much, so I can't really say I just eat. You know what I mean? It's a problem. So. Fin Down says, in those cases, I usually just default to 3D, but I feel like that's not a great solution because it makes my thumbnails really stiff and making them is really fiddly. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. It's usually when you're following that grid and you're on, in 3D, it's the same thing, even though there's not a grid. I mean, there is, but like you're not physically looking at a grid and tracing it. You're still doing it because you're making your cubes and transformations in 3D like that. So even whenever I work in 3D, I try to start with the 2D thumbnail, like something like this. Like I've been talking, this has been going on for 2 hours and 10 minutes, like more like 2 hours, right? And obviously I've been talking through half of it, so it's not accurate as to how long it would actually take me to do this. But, you know, it wouldn't take me that long. And I'll do this, and I'm like, oh, cool, I have a good base to start from, and then I'll build the 3D, right? I do that after the fact because it's a lot easier to kind of know, like, oh, cool, I need the centipede thing, I need a building, I need a whatever, and I'll kind of go from there, you know? So it's a little bit, it's funny because a lot of people do start in 3D nowadays, and it's effective. I will say it's a good tool, but what I will say is this, you know, there's a lot of things that happen translating 3D to 2D, and that's what we're doing, right? We're taking a 3D program, rendering out an image to get a 2D thing. And oftentimes, like, I don't know if you guys have done this a lot, but you'll make, let's say, a 3D model. It looks dope. It's like the coolest thing you've ever seen, right? And it's like, dude, this thing is sick. And then you'll take it in, you'll do the render, you bring it into Photoshop, and you're like, dude, this thing is trash. Like, there's no silhouette read. There's tangents everywhere. There's this and that. You know what I mean? There's like a lot of that. And so a lot of people don't design to a 2D format, right? They understand there's going to be a render, but they don't understand that this image needs to look good in a 2D format, because no matter how 3D your program is, you know, there's a point at which it needs to look the best. Whether you're doing games, theme park, animation, whatever it is, there's an angle that this thing needs to be usually shot in. Like, just imagine, like, when you watch a movie and they do the reveal of whatever the creature is, that's one angle that you're going to show that in. And even in games, there's one archway you're going to walk through, and then you're going to look up and you see the big castle. That's one view. Even though it's a 3D game, you'll see it from other things. There's a payoff moment that needs to happen for every important thing that happens in the game, movie, animation, right? Even theme parks are the same thing. That's why, like, when you go to Disneyland and you're walking in that beginning section where it's like a bunch of shops and towns, and then you walk through the castle, and then it's like, boom, you know, like you have this feeling, and you're kind of exposed to the whole world because they block your sight all the way up until what they want you to see. You know, and that's exactly what we're doing in you know, design, right? And so when you design, you need to think about it in a 2D space. Even though you're using 3D, you need to understand that the design is a 2D thing. So you need to make sure all your tangents are gone, this and that. You know, I'm not saying you don't work in 3D, because an experienced artist will just do that regardless, right? But it's for the people that are super reliant on 3D is where that becomes an issue. Because, like, oh yeah, I have it good from every angle, but it doesn't look great in one, and that's the issue, you know? So, sorry, I'll stop ranting. I do like 3D. I do use it. I haven't used it in a second, but I do like using it. But, you know, there's this level of, like, you know, super reliance on it, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands, like, you know, you can know 3D, but if your composition sucks, 3D is not going to save you, right? If your storytelling sucks, 3D is not going to save you. If your design sucks, 3D won't save you, you know? And the best 3D artists in the world, the best concept artists that are good at 3D, generally speaking, they're really good at painting too, right? If you look at, say, like Jama, right, the father of Blender 3D, right, for entertainment designers. Yeah, his paintings are fucking insane. Like, have you seen them? You know what I mean? If you look at the Naughty Dog guys, the people that do The Last of Us, or the people that used to do The Last of Us, right? It's like, you know, yeah, their 3D scenes are incredible, but have you seen their drawings and actual paintings? Like, Aaron Lamonic's disgustingly good, you know? John Sweeney is, like, disgustingly good. And it's just like, yeah, they're using 3D, but it's all 2D fundamentals that makes them that good, you know? So, get some water. Dewey said, what about ramen, man? Is that late night? It's dinner, dude. I don't know. Is that a snack? I mean, ramen's good. I feel like I'm getting old because I have to, like, plan my meals now. I don't know if you guys do this. When I was younger, I'm not even that old, but, you know, when I was younger, I was like, oh, you can eat whatever you want. I'll eat, like, you know, a full rack of ribs, a pepperoni pizza, and just go to sleep and I'll be fine. But nowadays I'm like, dude, I had too much sodium. Like, I feel kind of bloated. You know what I mean? So, but I don't know, maybe I'm just old. Who knows? All right. So let's start figuring this shit out. So I'm at a pretty good stage right now, right? Where it's like, you know what you're seeing, you know what you're looking at. Now I'm going to kind of start getting that tone set up and start getting all my, my images to kind of work better together. Right. So now I'm just going to start, start working things in, start, getting my atmosphere and everything to kind of look better together, start working on, different ideas and stuff. So, oh, what if this is red, bro? Is that cool? That's not cool. That might be cool. Hold up. And that's something that I recommend everybody kind of like do. And I'm just talking to myself, right? So it's whatever. But whenever you're working, just is that cool? Do you think that's interesting? Is that, is this even worth doing? And like, I think for me, if I took this painting to 100%, I think it looked pretty good, right? But that's not always the case, right? I'm going to do a couple more of these later on as we're kind of going. As I'm doing the weeks, you'll kind of see me kind of bring up new paintings because I'm going to do this painting now. This is basically the process that I kind of went with. And then next week, I'm going to start off the sessions with kind of showing you where my thumbnails are, and then we'll work from there. But yeah, it's something where it's like, this is one. And then, I would move on from here. This isn't what I'd present to my creative leads or whoever's, in charge of me. But this is something that I would be comfortable, like just saving, which I should actually do right now, by the way. Let's see. There you go. So this is something I'd be comfortable saving for now and then moving on to my next thumbnail. Because usually in my day, it's not just one painting that you do. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you do like 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8, paintings a day. And so what I'll do is I'll be like, okay, this is good enough for now. Let me move on to the other stuff because now it's easy, right? It's like it works. The composition looks good. There's no serious issues. I mean, there's things that could be better. Absolutely. But it's not like needing a complete overhaul to survive, essentially. And that's kind of where I need to be for all my images for me to be comfortable to move on, so. Martin says, what's your opinion on faking a shot in terms of perspective and other constraints for the sake of that one shot? How much does your scene have to make sense if it was another viewpoint? So that depends on what your medium you're working in, right? So for example, animation, dude, all day, you know what I mean? Like that's every shot. Like if it doesn't make sense, like if this scene doesn't make sense on the around the backside, doesn't matter, you know what I mean? Because you'll never see it that way, right? Because in animation, we control the camera. So, when you watch a movie, it's the director or the cinematographer, whoever's controlling the camera, and you're seeing what you're supposed to see, right? And you don't see any other views. Kind of like in Photoshop, when you like crop out, and you're like, what's all this? You know what I mean? Like, what's all that stuff on the side? It doesn't matter because they're never going to see it, right? In games, though, it becomes way more important. Games and theme park, right? Because you're going to walk, because the character is going to be able to go around this thing, right? They're going to be able to hit the other side and, see what's going on. And so you want to make sure that you understand what medium you're working in, right? If it's in games, it's pretty important because it's a 360 degree level. You have to be able to walk through the whole thing. And it at least kind of makes sense. There's one view that looks best, but most of it will always make sense, right? Animation, film, and animation and film specifically, not as important, but it has to kind of look okay, There are times where I'll fake things, but I try not to more often than not because somebody has to build this, right? Something to understand is whenever we do stuff like this, there's, designs that I need to do for, production, whatever it is, right? Somebody is behind me, right? Like there's a next person because I hand this off to my modeler or whoever, not mine, the production's modeler, or I guess the teammate, and he has to build it. She has to build it. And so I don't want to make something that's like a, what is it? An Escher, is it MC Escher? Yeah. MC Escher image where it's like just an illusion. You know what I mean? You don't want to be like confusing for them. Cause you have to be able to break it down. But if it is something that's like, it's impossible to do it, like there's some Studio Ghibli shots from Totoro that kind of mess with perspective to get that shot correct. You know, I mean, it's fine as long as everyone knows why you're doing it. But if you're just off just to be off, you know, that's probably not a great place to be. So. Sick. All right. Yeah, great question though. That's that. I mean, that happens a lot. You know, it's something where it really is like important to kind of know where your borders are, know where your boundaries are kind of set. You know, so. But so at least with some games, they limit where the characters can go. They're not all. Yeah, exactly. Right. So you know, there's open world games for sure. But yeah, not every, you know, sometimes, you know, you're not allowed to go to that top floor of the castle. So you don't really need to figure all that out, you know? So it just really depends on what your constraints are, you know, and that's where the issues or things can kind of happen. So, you know, things to be aware of. Great point. Great point. Let's see. Okay, boom. I'm a little off right now. That's okay. Copy, boom, vertical, pow. Wait, what is happening? Why is my water looking like not correct? There it is. Bro, dude, you know what I'm talking about? Bro, too easy, too easy. Oh, I want to see some of that red. So I'm going to kind of fudge this a little bit. But I do need to brush some of this back in. Boom. Grab some of that. You guys know that Rob Rupel painting with that big rock? Like, I'm trying to channel that. I mean, I'm not Rob Rupel, so. But there's this painting with a big rock that that he did. It looks fucking sick. If you guys don't know what it is. If you don't know who Rob Rupel is, get off your ass. Look him up.
Yes.
Rob Rupel. Yeah, it's probably like it was one of the first images that we see. Where's it at? I guess as I say that, it's like not even here. It's always like that. There it is.
Aton and John Park have done one like that too.
Yeah. They probably got it from him. But yeah, dude, it's so simple, bro. But it's so good. It did this in 2011. This guy's like killing me now, and this was 10 years ago. You know what I mean? So, I mean, he's a legend for a reason, but you know. Filter, blur. I guess I'll have my rock image too. Just you wait, Rob. Blur, motion blur. I can make rocks too. Let's see. Boom. There you go, dude. Just it's a little bit darker there. What else? That ground doesn't work anymore. So I need which way did he go? Let's see. Let's reference the master. So I just had it up too. And so, like, for those of you that I guess for those that are new or like maybe didn't know this, like have these artists as references, right? Like these people that are like miles better than, you know, where you'll ever be kind of thing, right? It's like, look at their work and, you know, just see like, hey, what did you do? How did you do some of these things? You know what I mean? Which direction did you go? Study that work because it can help you understand which direction you should take things, right? There's always, there's always something that you can pick up from a lot of these artists. And if there's somebody that you're aiming towards, just start looking at their work and be like, hey, what are you doing? You know, how did you decide on some of these things and break these things down? Like if you ever do master studies, right? This is what you're doing, right? You're understanding what decisions go into these designs, right? And so whenever you see this, you have to ask yourself like, oh, what did he do? What's going on here? You know? And you want to be able to kind of like understand that so you can kind of replicate it, right? It's not copying, but you're just studying from these masters that can, kind of get you into a better spot, because they did the studying for you. Now, you study them, and I mean, you study who they study too, but the whole idea is, you can kind of get there a little more effectively, so. And what I saw was in the back, it was really interesting. In the back here, it felt a little bit lighter. Like the ground feels a little bit lighter than some of the reflections. And then in the front, the ground feels a little bit lighter. In the back, it feels a little bit darker. So that's kind of what I did here. It's just a quick indication, and we'll get, we'll make this cool and spicy and whatever later. But the whole idea is I just need something to kind of get me there, and then we'll kind of work from there, so. I need this to be a bit darker. It's too mirror-like. Doesn't feel like water. Dude. There you go. Cool. So David asks, hi, Kenny, thank you for the stream. Is there a different philosophy you take when painting for animation? I guess technically, right? I guess technically speaking, yes. Because animation and games are a little bit different, right? As we know. There is I guess a different kind of push in certain styles and certain productions, right? And so what happens is in animation, there's a little more push for story and a little more push for stylization in some instances, right? Excuse me. So with that in mind, whenever I'm working for animation, yeah, I will be a little more story centric, right? But even though that's the case, when you're able to bring both, both ideas into both things, right? Like animation, you bring in a better design sense, or you bring in a strong, I guess, sense of design and form language, right? I do feel like a lot of animation tends to lack in that. It's more like real life things, right? And then games tends to lack that story or that feeling, that emotion that that animation has. You tend to be better in most cases, right? Because yes, there are tendencies towards certain things, but at the end of the day, design's design. Image making is just image making. So it really doesn't matter, what you're designing for. You should be applying all of it, right? Some of the best storytellers in the world do all of it, and that's what we're doing at the end of the day. We're storytelling for a medium, right? And so if you're painting, even though it's for animation, you can be a little more design centric, which I'm going to be doing in this case with a lot of the creatures and stuff like that once we get there. But once we get into I guess some of the other stuff, right? Some of the more story driven things, or I guess more design things, I'll still be doing things in a story driven way. It doesn't really change what I'm doing. It just changes I guess essentially who's receiving it at the end of the day. So, it's not really that different. I mean, at least I don't feel it's that different. But I'm just a guy, so I could be 1,000% wrong. I guess you'll never know. Sick. Hold up, dude, bro. Here we go. So. Something that I'm doing here, I'm really pushing this idea of like not pushing like lighting and stuff. I'm just trying to get my mood and tone set, right? Because I want this to feel like that, right? We know what it is. We'll get there. I'll make it spicy. I'll do what I need to do. But you start kind of losing a lot of that atmosphere and stuff. I do want some of those clouds to kind of be a little more prevalent. I want the clouds to be kind of separating as you kind of reveal this giant creature. But just the understanding of like, it's okay to not have everything, I guess, shown, and, you don't need to worry about lighting quite yet, because it's not even worth me adding lighting yet if I don't know it's going to be okay. Right. SCHO127 says, hi Kenny, if you master study you're doing feels very difficult. What you're doing feels very difficult. Then do you consider dialing the difficulty down? You find another artwork that is considered more simpler to understand? Yeah. So if it is ever like too difficult, right? If you're doing a master and you're like, I just don't know how to do this, start somewhere else, right? Or even just zoom in and like, let's say you can't do a master study of Sargent, right? Or whoever, right? Just do a hand. Do like the shirt, do the hat, right? Start small and kind of build up, because you don't want to have to tackle this entire thing and you're just studying. It's not really for anything. What you can do though is just look at the hand, look at the shoe, how does he paint that one highlight? And that's all you got to know, because little things like that can kind of go a long way. If you just kind of start somewhere, it's going to help you, kind of get to a place just a little bit, I guess more effectively than struggling for hours and hours on end on something that you might not even be capable of doing quite yet, So let me grab something real quick. So
Hey, Ken.
what's up, man?
I just had a quick question about what you had just mentioned before.
Yep.
So if we're trying to do something that's like games related, and we know the final product is going to be more 3D with more realism in the game engine, how important do you think it is in these like kind of mood pieces that are kind of selling the idea to try to make it look more like that final product versus something more painterly or that kind of thing?
Yeah. I guess the question would be like, do you need to match style immediately, right? Just because you're going to be doing, I guess it's a photoreal finish in a game, but you're painting like this, right? So in the very beginning, not so important, right? There's a level of like, you can't like, these clouds are a little stylized, right? There's a, looking at it, it's not a real cloud, right? It's a stylized cloud. So with that in mind, you want to understand that, they need something at least kind of close, right? So if you do a painting that's, maybe not so, I guess not so realistic, right? You might want to use some real shapes to kind of back that up to kind of get this in the right zone. You know what I'm saying? It's not so important that it be photoreal, but it is important that it matches the tone and style that they're looking for. If you can do that, you're going to be fine. But if you don't, that's where you kind of run into those issues. You know what I mean?
So you can use kind of the painting graphic block-in, but maybe using photos for your silhouettes or like photo for the sky or something like that would bring it more into that realm rather than like just making more of the stylized shapes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's you want to get close and you want them to understand that, hey, this is just a quick thumbnail, right? And you want to understand who you're talking to, right? Like if you're talking to an art director, creative director, usually you're probably going to be fine because they can tell, right? They know what they're looking at. They'll be like, oh yeah, cool. Now just spend the time and make this painting look photoreal or whatever it is, right? If you're talking to a client, that's where I'd be hesitant to show them something that's not really quite where they would want. You know what I mean? Like, because the client can't tell. They don't always, if it's a non-art based client, essentially, they can't always tell that, oh, it's gonna be photoreal, because they're like, why does this look cartoony? This isn't the project that we're asking for, kind of thing. And you can kind of run into issues there. So when you're kind of working with your creative leads, just understand that you want to be within style, but having a finished render doesn't really necessarily mean that you're in style. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you can still be like, for example, like some of the more painterly concept artwork, stuff like Craig Mullen, stuff like Jama, stuff like James Pack or John Park, right? It's not photoreal, but you can tell that it would go there. Like if you said, hey, take this to finish, you know what I mean? It's not that weird. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Lighting and color and everything works, and the shapes are right and everything, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like the correct tone that you're hitting, right? And that's where you're kind of you kind of get away with a little bit more. So just that's what I would be careful of, just making sure that you're in the right tone. But
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So I grabbed some clouds for my other painting. So I did a painting last week for those that don't know, and I finished the clouds. I just did some cool clouds that I thought was kind of fun within like the kind of look that I'm going for. And what I did was I just grabbed the cloud and brought it over because it doesn't matter, right? I painted that cloud. That's my cloud, and at the end of the day, that's what I'm doing. So if you're ever like struggling to try to keep things consistent, or you're running out of time, that's a big one. If you're ever like, oh, I can't quite do this in a certain amount of time or whatever it is, use assets, right? Use things that you've painted before, paint that cloud once. And this cloud that I painted here, where the hell is it? Where is my, boop. Where are you? Hold up. Show all windows. Boom. The cloud that I painted here, right? I mean, I painted that, but I took that from a different painting that I did, and it's like the same cloud that's been like bastardized into every single painting. And it's just because I'd rather not start that over and over again. Obviously I go in and I paint, I do my thing, but it just gets me like halfway there, right? Yeah. It's not the exact shape that we're kind of needing, but it's like close, you know what I mean? And then by the time you finish painting it, dude, no one's going to know, it's like, it's not a big deal that it's not the exact same. It's not like completely from scratch. So if you're ever struggling, trying to finish on time, doing these things that we have, 20 minutes left. And, I'm already starting to get textures involved, and it's starting to kind of get into a good spot, right? It's just because I'm able to kind of shortcut all of this just by using things that I've painted before, and it kind of gets me some of the way there. I still have to paint. I still got to do my thing, but I don't have to do all of it from scratch. So cool. I need to darken this down because that looks like doo-doo. Yeah, I'm always like, I always talk about in class where like, oh yeah, we're expected to do, this amount of paintings in a day, in a day's worth of work. They're always like, oh, what's the workload like? What are you expected to have? Right. And I think something that, I'll say is like, oh yeah, I do this amount of paintings in a day or whatever. Right. And it's always like, oh shit, how is that even possible? Like, how did you do 9 paintings in a day? Right. And is this right here. It's just like, I did a painting before. I did one of the other 9, and then I was like, cool, I need a cloud. Well, I already did that cloud once. Sweet. I'll do it again. I'll stretch it out. I'll just get textures in there, and then I'll paint the rest, It just gets you most of the way, and then from there it's, you be the artist. But the whole reason that this clipping mask situation that I did, the reason I kind of painstakingly kept things separate like that was because I knew that I was going to do this. I was like, okay, I'm going to just take those clouds. I'm going to do these things. And then we're kind of most of the way there, It's like you're really not far off from where you need to be. And then they go, dude, you painted all that in like, however much time? And you're like, yeah, man, that's why you paid me the big bucks. And then you walk off. You strut off like a hero. But no. But seriously, it really is what we do. It's awesome. Because then, the amount of time that it took you to do that, then you can, for one, take longer to do things, right? It's like not take longer as in the painting takes longer, but I have more time to think about design now that I guess the image is starting to be, like I don't need to worry about rendering as much, right? I don't have to play with a lot of these rendering ideas. I can just kind of get into my design thinking that really needs to happen, and rendering and making sure all the pieces work well together. But I'm kind of most of the way there with my render already. Right now I just need to find some textures for rocks, which, surprise, I have, and then we kind of just go from there. So It is a little bit weird though. I because I'm doing this in a I guess a simulated space. I can't take it much further. I'm hitting this wall to where normally I would just start moving into texturing, rendering, painting, doing whatever I need to do to make this finished, but I have to save that, which is interesting, which is funny. Like I have to save it for the next step because we need to kind of see where I go with it essentially. I can't just start jumping through hoops. And so the reason I'm doing a lot of this is just because like, we need to kind of see how I would approach stuff like this, So this is a little bit simulated. It's not like I was saying before, where it's like, oh, I'm trying to be 100% realistic to whatever it is I'm trying to show. But there is a level of like, I do need to hold back just a little bit because I can't jump past the next lesson, the next week, So there's a little bit of that, but you shouldn't need to worry about that too much. I'll be able, that shouldn't affect you guys. Soften, boom. Martin says, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Where is it?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's looking really good so far.
Cool. Thank you so much.
The shape language, excuse me for saying this, kind of gives me Howl's Moving Castle vibes a little.
Oh yeah, I think you missed it in the beginning. That's one of the references.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't here at the beginning. Oh, that
See?
is so funny.
Didn't even pay her to
Well,
say that.
That's really cool.
I'm glad it's coming through. So, but Martin says, I missed the last video for this. For these paintings, are they all thumbnail sketches first? Would you plan those 9 sketches, for example? Yeah. So I said it earlier where I was like, oh, this is where I would stop, and then I would do the other thumbnails, right? It was like somewhere where it was mostly just graphic shapes because it's mostly working at this point. That's where I would do it, right? So, in this case, I'd probably move on to my other thumbnails by this point, and then I'll go, okay, cool. I like 1 and 3, and then I'll take those to finish or whatever. So that's usually how I'll work, just normally. But just because I will be kind of doing this separately, and I kind of want to show you how far I would take some of this stuff before even presenting it to my art directors. That's where that's what we're kind of doing here. It's not like 100% like what I would be doing, but it's a basic simulation of, so, because like I said before, it is hard to perfectly simulate the working environment just because, I can't, there's no actual client here. There's no actual leads here to kind of tell me what I need or not, or what I can and can't do. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, normally in a setting, like I said, I would stop there. I would do my other thumbnails, approximately the same kind of thing. And I'd have that by like 3 or like maybe 2 to 3 o'clock if I'm pretty slow about it. And then from there, for the rest of the day, I would just just kind of keep rendering and get them to a presentable state, so. Cool. So I'm starting to introduce some other colors, right? So like what's happening right now is I brought in this kind of warmish cloud, and I was color flipping it, or I was color adjusting it to kind of match, but I kind of liked that greenish, grayish kind of tone that was coming in. And so I'm trying to play with it now because I want this to it's not like a safe space or anything. You know what I mean? It's not like something where it's like, oh yeah, I'm encountering this creature and it's magical. It's more like this thing's going to eat me and I got to get out of here. Right. And so I'm trying to set up this space to where it feels a little bit toxic. It's like cold and cloudy and there's atmosphere and stuff. And I'll kind of keep adjusting as we go. But it is something where, it's a bit of like just trying to make sure I start getting those tones that I'm trying to represent, so. Let's delete that. I don't need that one because this one's doing it just fine. Oh, dude. Teal? Bro, let's go. Well, Martin, if you did miss the last video, definitely check it out. It's, it's mostly me just talking. It doesn't really have anything to do with this project. Not that it's like not related, but it was mostly an equipment check. So if it's going to be a lot of just random talking versus like this one, we're actually doing something that will lead into next week. So, you know, it's, I mean, watch it, please. But you don't have to. Cool. Dude, it's looking fun. Let's start figuring this out. What's up? Oh yeah, so yeah, like I took that screenshot earlier. This is probably where I would stop, like if I was here. But you know, since we had time when I got to this point, I'm just kind of toning things, taking it further, you know, doing the business to it. So I don't like the way I tone that. Let's see. I don't like the way that went. I don't like the way this went either. That's better. Nah, hold up. So I'm having trouble with something. I don't know why. It just looks kind of funny to me. I think it's the lack. I think the rock itself is too light. It's like blending in too much with the ground, and I think that's the issue. So I'm gonna rectify this. So the cool thing, like I think you know, one of my students earlier mentioned that they like the process that I teach because it helped them, you know, with their process. And so what I do, for those that don't know, for those that are watching, is I like to work very separate. And it's for reasons like this. It feels a little bit off, and I'm able to like just grab layers and just adjust. And I can creep up into the I guess the value structure, the lighting structure, or whatever that I need to hit, right? Because how many of you have ever painted something and you know you painted like the clouds together or whatever, and you're very unable to like adjust anything, right? And now the value structure for me is working a lot better than it was like 10 seconds ago. But that's just because I'm able to like adjust things that it didn't feel right, and I can like stop, analyze, and adjust, right? Very easily. And it's something where this working process looks psychotic. You're like, dude, why is everything so separate? You can collapse some things, but it's the adjustments that I'm looking for. Because if something's not working, I can troubleshoot my way out of it, and it's a very safe approach, right? It's very easy to take this and be like, oh, cool, I need to readjust this to a daytime scene, right? Because oftentimes you'll get this more often than you think. It'll be like, hey, this painting looks pretty good. Can we get a daytime version? You're like, dude, you told me nighttime. So it's all set up, you know, to be the way it's supposed to be, right? But, you know, it's your job to paint. So what do? You grit your teeth and you just do it. But if everything's pretty layered out correctly, if everything works well, you can kind of do things just a little bit easier. You know what I mean? So just something to think about as you're working. You don't have to work this way, but I recommend it. So, you know. Sarah says, thanks very much for this master copy answer. Following up, are there any exercises you suggest students to improve at painting/color? Plein air painting, I highly recommend, or painting from life in general, right? I think something that happens a lot is like, and I have this problem too. Like one of my biggest issues is that my colors can kind of be a little bit unrealistic, right? It gets super set. Like for example, this one, I mean, it's a stylized painting, so it's fine, but the colors are a little bit strong, right? It's not exactly realistic, and not that it needs to be, but you know, the whole point is like, it's hard for me to get to this phase of like this painting, for example, not that this is even that realistic. But there's a fidelity that I feel like I'm missing a lot of times, and a way to get better at that is to kind of plein air more, do studies, because what you're doing whenever you do studies, right, is you're taking an image, or you're taking something they're kind of giving you the answers to, right? It's like, oh, hey, here's the design, or here's the exact answer to this mood, right? It's sunset lighting, it's foggy, whatever it is, right? And you're taking that and you're applying that to an actual to your painting, and then you just take that and apply it to your concepts. You know, you take that same thinking, the same color palette, whatever, but you're studying it. You're trying to see how light bounces around, trying to see how colors interact with each other, and little things like that can really go a long way. But something to understand is, when you go out to plein air, a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, I'm out, I'm plein airing, doing a thing, and then you just don't take it out. You don't do anything with it. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's, it doesn't really help if you don't apply. And that's the biggest secret. It's take the studies that you're doing and apply it, right? Understand that you need to, you're doing the study to help with the concept, but you also need to do the concept to help with the study to be able to see better, design better shapes, blah, 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 this and that, So something important that everyone should know, right, is that you don't want to do too much of one thing. If you're doing a lot of concepts, go do some studies. But if you're doing a lot of studies, go do some concepts. Because I'll get a lot of students that are like, oh yeah, I do all these master copies, I do all these plein airs, and then all of a sudden when you see their normal work, where it's like, oh yeah, it's a painting, they don't know how to do it because they're always given the answer. It's always like, oh hey, here's the, there's no real, you're not problem solving in this thing. You're just always given the answer. You know what I mean? So, and it's vice versa as well. If you're always doing concepts, you're never doing studies, your concepts never, right? If you're always doing concept, never doing studies, your images never look real. There's never a sense of life to it because you've never copied it. You've never tried to copy it. You know what I mean? So it just, it's a mess. It's do all of it and somehow squeeze it in a 24-hour day, So it sucks. It's the worst. Being an artist sucks. Whoever says this is great, it's not. It's constantly like fighting for your job and trying to stay ahead of the game, but always feeling like you're behind. Ugh, it's a nightmare.
My wife's getting pretty tired of it already.
No, it doesn't change, dude. This is the end game. This is what we do. I think there's like this idea that like, oh yeah, eventually it stops. I mean, it can if you feel like being unemployed. If you feel like not working, yeah, I guess it can stop. But that's the issue where it's like you have all these people learning new skills, doing things, and people that enjoy doing it. And yeah, you might be safe for a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's like it really is hard to kind of constantly be keeping up.
She's gonna love hearing that.
It's a test of love. I think that's the thing too, though. Like, I think finding that balance is so important, right? It's like, I think for everybody, right? When you're a student and you're looking for work, yeah, do whatever it is you need to do, just do it. Like, just get there, right? Because you need money, you need whatever, right? Let's not dance around the fact that we need to survive in this world somehow, right? And so you need money to survive. So get the job, pull all-nighters, do whatever it is. It's not healthy. And I mean, you can complain about it, but at the end of the day, it's like, I mean, if you're not working, you're not working, right? So do what you need to do. But eventually, once you start working, start trying to figure out like the first step. And I tell all my students this, the first step when you start working is learning how to stop at 6 o'clock, right? It's like when you're a student, you're working forever, right? It's 10 o'clock right now, and I'm still painting, so I'm not even that good at it. But it's something where you want to be able to end your day when it's time to clock out, because not all of us are able to do that. Spoiler alert: if you've never worked before, and you're starting to get to the point where you are working, you'll feel, whether it's true or not, you'll feel that you might not be able to stop at 6 o'clock because you're like, oh shit, I'm behind. I got to do this thing, whatever it is. Right. And, I mean, it is what it is. You could not do it and be, I guess, unemployed. Right. But you could also just do it. But the whole point is the first year to 3 years, it's just kind of find your groove, get to a point to where you can start at 9 or 10 or whatever time you start and end at 6, right? Do that 9 to 5 job and be able to stop and go live a life afterwards, right? That's the first step. If you can find time on the weekends to do extra work for yourself, that's perfect. But studio work needs to end at a certain time because you can't live that way. You know what I mean? And so if you can, that's what I recommend to my students is just grind for a little bit longer, but aim for that 6 o'clock. You know, you're not always going to hit it, but at the very least, you're going to get to a point to where you can kind of get close, you know? And then after that, you can start figuring out like all the other stuff, you know, but it's important to find that balance quickly because it's not, they don't give it to you either. It's going to feel like you're like, oh, they're always piling on work. Yeah. Cause you keep submitting work, you know, because there's always going to be work. It's always going to be like, you know, somebody, it's like, oh, they keep giving me assignments. It's like, yeah, maybe you should chill out a little bit. You know what I mean? Because they just have work for you, you know? Yeah, exactly what Finn says, right? If you keep doing overtime, producers will assume that's your output. If you keep doing work and you submit it and you don't tell anybody, they're just going to assume you did that in a 9 to 5 days. They're like, oh, you were doing 4 paintings a day before, and now you're doing 1, but that 1 painting was, you know, what actually 9 to 5. And that's an issue, right? It's a lot of like, trying to find that balance, and it's not easy. As a student, it's very hard. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds like, yeah, just stop, you know. No, it's not that hard. It's not that easy, but you do have to start forcing yourself to do so because it's either that or, you know, lose friends, family, relationships, right? And then what's art worth, right? Is it worth all that? Not really. Dope.
I feel like we've talked about this topic like a lot before, but I feel like what's really hard about that is like you say that now as something that you've learned, and like a lot of artists say that now is something that they've learned, but I feel like sometimes it feels like when you're in the beginning of your career, like, and I'm not saying that I think I'm right in this, I'm just saying sometimes it feels like you do have to put in that secret overtime, those like ghost hours, because like I don't know, like maybe there's like a need to like prove yourself, to like kind of like build up your credit in the industry so that you can even just get more work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It feels like tough because like I 100% agree with you, and I in general like hate how competitive like it seems and feels, because like I believe that like it kind of has created this like mindset that if you're not working so much overtime, then you're not working hard, when in reality like you could be working a 9 to 5, actually end at 5, and be a hard worker and have a healthy life. But I think now like so many of us feel like we have to work so much more than that, otherwise we're not working hard enough, we don't want this enough, or something like that, and it kind of creates this toxic dynamic and toxic, I don't know, just like circle that you just get stuck in, or mindset that you get stuck in.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. So your first like when you first get a job, you probably can't keep up with what the studio is normally asking of you, right? Because you know the studio is going to work at whatever pace that studio works at. That's just what it is. You can fight them on it. Can't promise you'll be employed, but you can fight them if you want. But most people won't, right? And so what I mean is, that first year, you want to be able to handle the workload that they give you within a 8-hour day, right? Because, you know, when you're a senior level artist, you know how much work is expected within a day. It's actually not that crazy, right? It's like, you know what is generally expected of an artist because you have experience. But when you're a junior, you actually might be too slow, right? It's hard to know that because, you know, when you tell somebody, hey, I want 5 paintings a day, that sounds crazy, but that's the pace that I work at. You know what I mean? That's the pace that a lot of my coworkers work at. And so, you know, it might sound crazy as a junior, but that's just because you're just not used to doing that. And you have to get yourself to that pace, right? You have to get yourself to the ability to be able to produce at the pace that the studio needs you to produce at, which is difficult. and it takes some overtime sometimes, you know, and you might need to tell your boss or whoever, or if you keep that to yourself, that's on you. But the idea is you want to be able to get to that pace within 8 hours. That's your first goal, right? Screw everything else. Screw getting better. It's about getting more efficient, right? Because you can finish the workload that's expected. If it's a reasonable workload. If it's like unreasonable, if it's dumb, then, you know, that's a whole other thing. But if it's something that's like most people are like, yeah, this is generally what we work at, then you should probably be expected to do the same, because that's the expectation. And a lot of juniors can't do that in their first 1 to 3 years. But the issue is when you kind of integrate that into your life and it just becomes a thing that you just do, and you're doing it for 10 plus years, you know, that's how you burn out. That's how you hate your job, this and that. So what you should do is aim for that 8 hours, and then you can start doing other stuff, because, you know, you want to balance your life first. When you're a student, it's full throttle to get a job, because you're like, hey, I'm broke, I need money, and I'm going to be homeless in however many months or whatever it is. I need a job now, right? So yeah, you pull your all-nighter, you do your thing. But once you get the job, you have that bit of balance left. Now, income's coming in. The threat of poverty is a little bit further away, right? It's always there, but it's a little bit further away. And you're able to start slowing down a little bit. But you don't want to just step on the brakes. You want to get your car to a cruising speed, because you've been flooring it the whole time, but now you want to get to the point where your car can move at a cruising speed and you can bring balance back to your life. Because being a student is, generally speaking, it's not balanced. I mean, some people are, and those are freaks of nature, right? That's just not right. You know what I mean? But there is oftentimes, in my experience, students don't balance that ability. And when you first start, that should be one of your first priorities. Because once you get that, then you can start figuring out other things. Oh, I want to do a personal project. I want to do these other things. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where your life starts kind of gaining a little bit of momentum, and you're able to kind of do things just a little bit more. So it is like that, but it should stop, right? And that's that's what we're talking about here. I think we're both agreeing on that, but it's just something where it needs to stop on your end, and you need to be able to produce work quick enough to do that, right? Obviously, if they're abusing you and it's a non-achievable goal, you need to say something or you need to leave. But if it is like, yeah, everyone's like, yeah, this is really what it is. You know, ask around, ask your coworkers, ask other professionals at other studios, and say, hey, is this kind of what is expected of a senior level or mid-level artist or junior level artist? And they're like, yeah, that's about right. That doesn't sound that crazy, right? And that's when you're like, okay, cool, I have to step it up. But if it's like, oh yeah, no, that's weird, that's crazy, you know what I mean? That's when you're like, okay, cool, maybe I should say something, or maybe I should leave, or whatever, you know. So
Well,
yeah.
something that even feels like a weird phenomena to me is that, like, in a way, I do feel like a lot more is asked of art, like working artists, like working professional artists, because before, like, I started pursuing art, I mean, I was on a different career path. I was doing something else, and like, I would have considered myself like generally like just a hard worker, somebody who had like some ambition, and like I worked really hard in my job, but it was one thing that was not hard was leaving my work at 6 or 5 or 6 whenever I got off, and going home and having the rest of the evening to myself. Like, balancing work was a lot easier, and if they needed you, like, overtime was way more clear. Like, I did work a lot of overtime. I was one of the first to like always step up or volunteer if overtime like was asked of anyone. But it was such a clear thing that you were being asked, and you would be paid double or sometimes triple your salary to work overtime. So it was kind of like a cool trade-off, especially when you're just like younger and you have the time and you don't have like a lot of commitment elsewhere. It's like, yeah, I can have this free time, or I can make like triple what I was making to work some overtime. But that was like so much more clear, like them asking you to do overtime, your job like in a day. And it's not to say that like I would always like finish, you know, like sometimes you have a lot of work on your plate, but I never really had to bring that work home with me. Like I didn't have that same stress or anxiety that like I now find that I have doing this, which is I think just so weird because it actually makes me feel like I'm not like I'm not as hard a worker, or I'm not as ambitious anymore. And it's like this weird feeling that I never used to feel. Um, and I do actually, in a weird way, like I do think like there is some truth to it in that like it's slowed me down. Like I struggled for a while with just feeling so overwhelmed by the amount of work that I do feel like I was actually doing less work because I was overwhelmed. And I think I'm like finally getting out of that, a little bit now, but I just feel like that was weird. Like that's a weird thing. And I don't really remember ever feeling this way outside of art.
I think that's what I mean, where like you want to ask around, right? Like ask, like, so just literally like ask one of your friends. You ask me shit. Obviously it's NDA, so ask me offline. But, ask like, hey, is this amount of work common for a studio? You know what I mean? Just ask, because that's the whole idea. It's, you want to find out, am I being abused or am I slow? You know what I mean? And you want to know the difference, because it's not, it's not that you're like, like slow or anything, but it's just like, you could be being abused, where it's like, they're just, hey, they're putting on way too much work that's not expected of an artist of your skill set, right? So ask another artist that you know. And if it's like, oh yeah, that sounds about right, then yeah, you need to catch up. And that's usually what the thing is when you're first starting, your first 1 to 3 years. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. 1 to 3 years is how long it takes to catch up. If you haven't been working long enough, chances are, I'm not saying it's always the case, but chances are you're not as quick or you're not as fast as you need to be for production, right? You want to ask around to make sure that's the case, right? Because you don't want to just be like, oh, I don't feel like I'm doing doing these things correctly or whatever it is, right? You want to ask first, and then if it is abuse, that's when you bring it up to your superiors, or you're like, hey, I don't think I should be expected to do this because of A, B, and C reason. But chances are most juniors aren't really capable of keeping up with the means of production when they first start. Is that right? I don't know. I'm not the judge of that, right? But it is something where I don't want to kind of get the idea in people's mind that, oh, if you feel overworked, then you should call HR or something. You ask first and see how it goes, and then you can decide like, hey, am I going about this correctly or not? Because for me, for example, it's when I first started, I was too slow. For the studio and the pace that I was working at, I was just too slow for my studio, and I had to catch up. But eventually I got to the point where I was able to finish at 6:00. And most studios at this point in time, like they won't expect me to do much, won't expect me to do more than what that baseline was. And if they are, especially in animation, they will pay you overtime. Because I worked in games and animation. Animation's like harder to do overtime for, because you have to get approval and everything for it. Like, because you're union, so they stop that kind of stuff from happening. Games, the studio that I was at, I had to get approval from our game director to be like, hey, can he do overtime to finish this thing? And they'll say like, hey, is this task needed to do overtime for, because they're paying you extra for that. So that whole structure exists. It's a thing. It really is. But you have to make sure first is it me or is it them? And most of the time for juniors, it's usually you. You're not like trained to do this at this pace, because classes don't train you to do this at that pace, right? Like, it's 7 days before the next time we meet, like this live stream alone. This painting should be done by tomorrow in a real setting. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where that difference really does show through, because the classroom setting is a very elongated timeline. 7 days is a very long time to be working on one assignment. You know, usually we'll get 1 to 2 days, maybe 3 to finish a painting or whatever it is. You know, that can extend, that can change, but you know, it's a pace that you're probably not used to. And you want to make sure that it's either that it's you first before, or them before you start, you know, I guess bringing things up and, you know, causing friction in a workspace. You know what I'm saying? Not saying that's, you know, they will abuse you. The studios will do that. They are,
No,
it's a
I
habit.
really don't. I did not at all mean to suggest that like the studio I was working for was abusing me or taking advantage of me. I
sure.
actually think that they were really nice to me, like all things considered. And I definitely think that it's me that is like, you know, I'm not as fast as like the standard is, but I think what's so difficult is, and that's great, like it's kind of aided to just, I think, you know, getting down on yourself, or like kind of that mental hardship of like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm not enough, and this is like, I feel like so much more is expected, but it's not that so much more is expected of me, but I think it's just that realization that like, I think like in the industry, like you just have to produce so fast, and
Yeah.
it really feels a lot different than a lot of other fields of work, because it's like if you're a project manager or a product manager or do something like that, you don't have to go home and practice your work to get better.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you have to take classes or get a license or something like that, but it's like that, you know, will end eventually. And it's like, I feel like it's not just the work, it's also like wanting to grow, wanting to do studies, wanting to grow your portfolio. Your entire life starts to feel so consumed by art. And I do genuinely like love creating, but I think I like creating a little bit more slowly right now than
Yeah.
I think the pace I need to create at, which is kind of the struggle that I run into.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, so it's interesting and it's weird. And
Yeah, it's I mean, that's what I was saying earlier, like art sucks. So, there's like, because it's that, right? It's you really do have to love what you do. You have to enjoy, like, for those, like, if you're looking to make money doing art, like if money's like your the thing that you're like, hey, I want to make a ton of cash. Art's not the way. Yeah, you can make a lot. Don't get me wrong. If you go certain avenues, you could make, you know, I mean, you can make 6 figures easily, and you can make 7 figures if possibly. You know what I mean? Like, it's not impossible to do that. But is it worth it? You know what I mean? I can't say that's I can't say that's how, like, you know, you can make more money doing other things, right? So you really do have to enjoy doing art to be able to do this, because so many people want to do this. And unfortunately, that means competition's high, and you have to stay employable. You know, at the end of the day, it's for me, it really is like, I need to make sure that I'm able to perform on my job, because there's some other student that's, you know, dying to have my position. And it's, you know, not that I'm like, oh, stay away from me. It's not like that, but it's just something where it's like, you know, I want to make sure that I can perform at the levels that they expect me to perform at, you know. So, but you know, it'd be like that.
well, actually, one thing that does kind of in a way motivate me, like, is motivate me to, like, you know, stick through like the hardship, is because I do actually want to get better. I do want to get faster, even though I don't like working at that pace now. I know part of it is just a skill issue. Like, it's harder for me to work that fast. And but I mean, like, I think like one of my end goals or like dreams really is to just like, and I'm thinking like way more in the future, like I want to work for studios now, like, but I do eventually want to kind of run my own small business. I want to like illustrate children's books, and I want to like write some books, and I want to do like more of my own thing. But I feel like I want to be able to do that at a point where I can really be successful doing that. And
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of feel like working now like for companies is like good training in a way, because as like I know for myself, like I do need better discipline, especially at doing those things. But art is definitely like a huge passion of mine.
Yeah.
But I struggle like to, I think, be more disciplined and more what's the word I'm looking for, like even just like consistent with things, be like a finisher. And that's like one, I guess, like one way I'm looking to grow personally.
Nice. That's good. All right. So guys, we are wrapping up right now, right? Sorry, going a little bit over, but I just kind of wanted to talk about just, I guess, where I started, right? And kind of where I'm going now, and then kind of talk about what I'm going to be showing next week, right? So for those that are following along, we have this, doo-doo of a sketch, right? It's really not that crazy of a sketch, but if you turn that off, it's basically what we have here, right? It's the same general same general idea, and I just refined the drawing as I went, right? There's things that weren't there, like this rock, but the gestures are the same, things leading into where I need people to look. At this point, all I got to do is just start rendering stuff, start making things pop off more, start making this stuff kind of read and, look better. But at the end of the day, it's mostly there, right? I can take this painting further, which I definitely will, but I'm going to be doing some more paintings for you guys to kind of see and kind of understand like what I would show up with in my first round of ideation. You'll kind of see that next week, but just understand like this is a process, right? When I went into this, I had no idea that I was going to be drawing something like this, right? I kind of sort of thought some of these things, right? It's like there was like a couple things where like, oh yeah, that's kind of like the centipede there was there the whole time. But like a lot of this stuff changed, you know what I mean? I kind of adjusted some things from this sketch here. And then, I added some of the lighting and the tone to try to get it to match where I needed it to be. And then from there, now it's going to be starting to render that 100%. So pretty simple, pretty basic. There's no real rendering involved. It's mostly graphic read. It's mostly silhouettes and composition. If your idea doesn't work at this stage, chances are your ideas just won't work. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure this stage looks good before you kind of move on. So with that in mind, for those that are wanting to follow along, right? What I recommend doing is, try to create that reference board that we talked about. This whole stream is going to be uploaded a little bit later, soon, probably right after this, to be honest. It's going to be uploaded, and just watch it again and kind of see what I was doing. Try to understand like, oh yeah, he made a reference board. This is why he did it. Make your own project. I would love for you to follow along, and please, if you do, send it to me. I'll give you crits. I'll give you, we can talk about whatever it is that you need to kind of get your project going. But this is kind of where I would start, and then we'll kind of see from there, right? So make your reference board, do some thumbnail ideations. I usually recommend 5 to 6. If you need more, do more. If you don't have an idea by 5 or 6, keep going. If you have your idea by then, pick one and, kind of keep moving with it. So, but yeah, so that in mind, let me read some of the questions before we dip out. Are we supposed to be following along? This is the first time checking out this stream. Yeah, so you don't have to. You can just watch and just understand. If you are somebody that wants to create a portfolio, if you're somebody that has a project that you need to do and you don't really know how to go about it, right? This is a stream that I'm going to be doing weekly for a while, but for these 10 weeks, we're going to be creating a vertical slice of a project. So you can follow along and you can create work and things like that. And hopefully everybody that follows along will have a portfolio that, it makes sense how you got there essentially, right? And I'll kind of talk about some things on the process, and then I'll kind of talk about some things that, just random things that we want to talk about. So, so you can follow along if you like, but you also don't have to. I do recommend it though. I mean, if you're getting, you're getting this information, you might as well do it, right? Because if you don't do it, it's not that you don't retain it, But I mean, you know what I mean? When's the last time you did something, or was the last time you heard something but didn't apply it, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm a master at it. You know what I mean? So that's what I would recommend. What's our streaming time next week? So next week, the streaming time is same time, right? Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So 3 hours, like wherever you're at now, 3 hours before right now, right? We've been streaming for 3 hours. And then, yeah, so just kind of go from there. In terms of, what other questions did I have? What's the Discord? So right now the Discord is currently for my past students and stuff like that. So if you're just joining me, reach out to me. If you go to my about section in my YouTube section, there's a link tree. Click that, and then message me, and I'll see what we can do to kind of get you participating. If you are going to be participating, let me know. Like, we can kind of work something out. If you don't plan on participating, obviously I can't let you in the Discord if you're not going to participate. You know what I mean? So just understand that there is a commitment involved with that. It is a little more of a, like, currently at this 10-week junction, it's going to be a little bit more of a kind of test run to kind of do all these things. So just kind of keep that in mind. But if you are serious about this, please message me on my Instagram. I'll get to you, and we'll work something out, whether that means you sending me the work or, whatever that means. So what else is there? Cool. Ramik, yeah, thanks for joining, man. Cool. Awesome, guys. So with that in mind, that's all I got for you guys. So I'll just keep posting stuff. I'll show you guys what we're going to be working on next week, and I'll have a little more things worked out. So if you plan on participating, I'd love to kind of see your work. Send it to me through my Instagram if possible, and then yeah. So with that in mind, guys, thanks for watching. Just come back next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and then yeah, we'll go from there. So thanks, guys.